Welcome everyone to the VEF Virtual Series. For those of you who are joining for the first time, the VEF Virtual Series, guided by the theme Accelerating the Energy Transition, is a sequence of online consultations that explore the pathways that stimulate demand and promote economic recovery in 3 end-use sectors. So this is the 6th session of our industry track, and we will cover digitalization and innovation. Now, before we begin, I would like to very quickly draw your attention to our networking station at the bottom left of your screen. This will be open from 3:30 to 3:45, and it's an excellent platform for you to interact with our incredible pool of participants joining us this afternoon. So make sure to check it out at the end of the plenary. Now, to break the ice, we would like to start with a quick interactive poll. On the right side where your chat is, there is a tab called Slido. Now you will see a question there and 3 answers for you to choose from. So please make sure to send in your response within the next hour, and then we will regroup after the breakout room discussions and take a look at the results. So the question is, which digital technology application can yield the highest energy efficiency gains? Again, if you didn't hear me correctly, if I was too fast, just go to the Slido tab to the right of your screen above the chat and select your answer. Now, to begin with today's program, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Petra Schwager. She is the Chief of the Energy Technologies and Industrial Applications Division here at UNIDO. So I'm letting her in the platform.
Hi. Hello.
Thank you for joining. Please go ahead.
Great, wonderful. Thank you for having me. And thanks for allowing me to moderate this exciting session. So thanks again for all of you for joining this session of the Vienna Energy Forum Virtual Series Industry Track. You have also already heard that there were several sessions so far, and today's session will explore the key opportunities for achieving greater digitalization in industry in various countries and sectors, and also the potential resulting greater resilience and innovation. The response to COVID-19 is speeding up digitalization and spurring innovation. Those sectors, countries, companies that have already made the shift to digitalization have survived the crisis better. Innovative solutions such as upscaling digitalization can address energy, climate, and industrial growth targets. How can industry capitalize on this moving forward? Many opportunities exist for industry. Advancing in digitalization can optimize processes that can result in efficiencies, energy, carbon, and financial at various levels. At an organizational level, within the supply chains to increase financial transparency and optimize production. For example, machine learning, artificial intelligence, digital twinning. Digitalization can definitely spur innovation that reduces environmental impact and improves efficiencies. For example, packaging processes that through digital twinning can reduce heat and materials. Digital technology can cut business flights by 50% or more. Local co-working hubs can reduce commuting emissions by around 50 to 60% annually for many people. In the first part of today's session, we will hear from Mr. Adam Pavlos from the NONE Group to set the scene for us. Adam is a sustainability professional with 25 years of experience. His focus areas are supply chain sustainability, circular economy in packaging, energy efficiency and transition, carbon footprinting, and decarbonization pathways, with experience in Europe, Eastern Europe, Asia, and Latin America. Following this presentation, we will move into 3 moderated breakout sessions where our speakers will discuss the topic with a view on global perspective. Here we are going to be joined by experts from Metron, Valeo, International Energy Agency, and Clemson University. The second group will tackle country perspectives, and we will be joined by representatives and experts from Austria, United Arab Emirates, Australia, and the US. Enablers for Progress will also join us in the third group, and here we have Tambourine Innovation Ventures, PAD Technologies, Gen Europe, UNIDO, Open Energy, and INEA. After the discussions in the breakout rooms, we will come back to the plenary to hear from the moderators of each group on the outcomes of the discussions. So it's time now to turn to our scene-setting presentation. Adam, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Let me share the slide deck. Yes, welcome, and thank you very much for inviting me. I was asked to shed some light on digitalization experience in a big company like Danone Group, and I'm happy to share it and give some inspirations for the sessions going on. My name is Adam Pavlos. I'm the Global Utilities Manager for Danone in Water Division based in France. And a little bit about the Danone Group, just to set the context. As you know, it's a big organization in terms of sales, in terms of employment, in terms of number of factories. It's based on 3 divisions: essential dairy and plant-based milk product and alternative milk product, specialized nutrition, early and medical, and waters, bottled water and beverages. Digitalization is not disconnected from the overall agenda on sustainability. So it's not only the productivity that matters for the energy efficiency, for the energy optimization, but also the energy transition to renewable sources. Like many other big organizations, there are targets, there are pledges, and of course there's a hard-working team behind to deliver these targets and define the roadmaps for the different objectives. A bit on digitalization. So traditionally, of course, industrial plants, they have industrial factory-based systems for visualization and control systems. I will talk about it in more detail. Then, of course, with productivity projects a few years ago, energy monitoring optimization software came into play, and it was used, it was deployed, and now a number of factories, especially the big ones, are moving into the factory-wide digitalization, where energy is only a component of it, and it's all about performance monitoring of the whole industrial processes. So when you enter a big organization, I think this is a very representative picture for several other industries. Is you will encounter 4 types of digital tools available for energy. The first one is, as I mentioned, is the equipment. It's the SCADA, which stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition System, which is a traditional process control for equipment. It's typically plant-based, but modern solutions are also web-based. But let's say traditionally it's bound to the plant, to the factory. The second is cost controlling, so a system that is driven by accountants and controllers. The third one is environmental reporting system, driven by external reporting obligations, sustainability reporting typically. And the fourth one, not the least, is the energy performance monitoring. There are differences, there are nuances between all these things. And very often in big organizations, you have all these 4 systems in parallel, more or less integrated. And the need, the historical development of all these systems, of these solutions, was coming from growing reporting requirements, the multitasking of the personnel in the factories. So automation had to help. The software solution had to help with data acquisition, with data analysis, and so on. And not to forget also the skill gap. So there are factories where there are so many processes, and we cannot expect that from people, from engineers, from managers, that they know all the processes in detail. And energy software is also helping us to fill the skill gap, especially if there is an expertise behind the software. So let me tell you slightly and quickly about what are the key differences in these software solutions. So in the SCADA system, industrial visualization system, we have visualization of the process, of the equipment, control equipment, typically also with some sequencing. If there is a series of machines like compressors, like boilers, you can set alarms, you can monitor some critical parameters for maintenance, for operation, and we can check the performance of the equipment. from energy perspective, from maintenance, from delivery of the utility. In the cost controlling software, typically what is collected is the production data, cost data, and the main KPIs, the main performance indicators like energy consumption for a product, per value, per unit of product, and so on. In the third system, environmental monitoring system, typically there's a database of environmental data coming from emissions, coming from waste, from energy, types of energy, types of fuels used, emission factors, and so on. And this is something that is auditable, and this is used for aggregation and publication of the external reports. And energy performance monitoring systems, or the software solutions, they are typically based on clouds. So this is the recent development. And they combine typically the data from SCADA, so from industrial visualization systems that have been very traditionally in place in factories, and production data. They can include environmental and cost data. They can also include not only energy, but also water. They can include chemical consumption, everything that is related to productivity, to efficiencies. This software is typically having functionalities of setting targets, setting desired consumptions, analyzing the right performance, analyzing deviations, and combining the energy consumptions with the influencing factors. Typically, the main influencing factor is production output, but for some processes, it could be also different other conditions like external weather data, like capacity utilization, all other factors, and you can analyze them with this energy platform in a professional way. This energy software is also using alerts, so a site can be warned about some unusual deviation of a meter or consumption, specific consumption or absolute consumption. It can also track the impact of projects. So if a company is implementing energy efficiency projects, this software usually can enable to verify if the project is delivering the right savings. To complement on this and to gather the overall experience from these projects, this is the page I wanted to formalize and share with you just for further discussions regarding projects. It could be programs, support programs for other industries, for smaller enterprises. This is the experience we have accumulated over the years, and this is still something that is valid when we start, on when we upgrade, when we extend every of these energy digitalization projects. So first, project brief. Very often, the problems occur with the scope definition and users. It's good to define the scope and users of the energy software on the onset of the project, before the acceptance. Changing it later on is costly. It can lead to delays. It can delay to complexities and reconfigurations of the system. So this is important. The second one is clarity about objectives. Is this software about to deliver savings, cost avoidance, but maybe adding external expertise? Because with the monitoring, we can also expertise behind to analyze for us and give us guidance based on the results, web-based. It's also very useful to make rough assumptions about the total cost of owning the software. So it's not only the installation, but it's also subscription, likely additional costs, maintenance, but also digitalization. So all the instruments that are needed and data connectivity that is needed to make the platform work. And very often, this digitalization phase is more expensive than the software solution itself. So we have to keep it in mind. In the project planning, our experience is it typically takes much longer to have the right metering structure, to digitalize it, to configure the data for users, to be able to go live with the platform. It's months. In the phase of going live and use, 2 points to mention, to highlight. One is involvement of site team and external expertise if needed. It's not a plug-and-play solution. It needs involvement. The site should be using it with external help, but there has to be a buy-in locally in the team. And secondly, for the durability of the solution is integrated into the on-site performance routines like meetings, daily, weekly, monthly meetings, budget reviews, and so on, because then the tool is one life and it's really appreciated by the users. The last point I wanted to mention here in this presentation is the digitalization trends. So what we see at the moment is, as a market, is also our internal in-house demands. So first of all, I think there will be more and more demand for software, energy monitoring software, energy optimization software, with the service of expertise. So someone that is in the web-based system, a kind of control tower outside of the company, that is very specialized in monitoring compressors, monitoring boilers, monitoring drying processes, whatever you name it, and gives us a guidance on how to interpret the data, what to do, what to check, how to resolve certain problems. Because again, as I told you, multitasking at the moment is a trend in the industry. So there's a wide scope for engineers to look after the equipment, and this kind of complementary skill or expertise will be highly needed in the future. Secondly, the energy monitoring solutions might also migrate to a wider interconnected platforms of digitalization in a factory. So this could also be an option, that the energy solution will be like a standalone project or program of activity, but it might also be integrated with a further wider digitalization. I also already see it happening in some factories down on. The third element, the third trend that is emerging, is the more automation. So including embedding data analytics with machine learning functions. So something that is not only the engineers that are looking after interpreting the data, but we are including really machine learning into data pattern analysis and trying to pick deviations, pick problems, and then indicate them, shortlist them to the engineers to analyze, because of course the abundance of data is growing. Yes, this is all from my side. I hope it sheds some lights and gives some thoughts for further discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for this great introduction. I think it's going to be a really good tool to get the conversation started in the breakout rooms. So thank you so much. Now, as Petra mentioned, we have 3 breakout rooms today: global perspectives, country voices, and enablers for progress. Now, to access them, please click on the series button to the left of your screen. You're going to see the 3 different options. Now, to our speakers, please enter your assigned breakout room. And to our participants, please feel free to virtually walk around our different rooms and select the one that you're most interested in. Please remember that we really encourage you to, make any comments or ask questions using the chat to the right. And then we will regroup back at the end to hear the conclusions from the different discussions. So thank you so much for joining.
Well, thank you all for joining this discussion. I'm Vida Rosita from the Energy Efficiency Division of the International Energy Agency, and I'm delighted to be moderating this discussion on global perspectives. I lead the IEA work on digitalization, including our cross-agency multi-year project, Digital Demand-Driven Electricity Networks 310, which is supported by the Italian government. I've previously been working on cleaner production and industrial energy efficiency, so I really cannot think of a more exciting topic than the one that we'll be discussing here today. And we do have a great lineup of panelists, so let's start with a quick round of introductions. So if I could just ask you to state your name, affiliation, and if I could ask you to share with us the one thing about digitalization and the opportunities that it can unlock that excites you the most today. If we start with Jean-Luc, please.
Good afternoon to all of you, and thanks, Vida Rosita. I will be here. I represent Valeo, a global automotive tier 1 supplier, very much involved in electrification and autonomous connected safe devices.
And what excites you about digitalization, Jean-Luc?
What you wanted the first few sentences about that. Well, what excites me is that automotive suppliers like us are really bringing the new innovation along the road of new mobility to make it a cleaner and safer environment. And we need for that to combine the challenges of the green and the challenges of the digital. So this is what excites us particularly. It's digitalization, but with certainly a very carbon footprint reduced at minimum as much as we can.
Excellent. Thank you, Jean-Luc. And moving on to Adam, we already know you, but please, if you could reintroduce yourself.
Yes, so my name is Adam Pavlos. I'm in charge of utilities for Dun & Waters. Some of you I know at least the companies and services I know. I'm looking at now in Vincent. Yes, so I'm coming also from energy efficiency, energy transition agenda. Worked for many years in breweries before. So I can speak not only of the short experience I have in the group, in Danone Group, but also in other food sectors. It's very similar challenges. My dream is to have integrated platforms on digital. So things interconnected, things like connecting utility plants with end consumers to be able to sequence equipment based on the demand. This is what we managed to do in very few plants. There's automation effort involved and so on, but this is a kind of dream story. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Adam. And moving on to Vincent.
Thank you. So I'm Vincent Siendra. I'm the founder and CEO of Metron. Metron is a company I created 7 years ago that helps industrials to reduce their energy consumption and carbon footprint impact thanks to digitalization. So what wakes me up every morning is the fact of being able to put data on top of each electron and molecule and to see where it ends up in a product in the end. So it's to really completely reverse the vision of what we have of energy today by seeing it more as a raw material and how to optimize it on a daily basis. And just to link with what you say, Adam, when I created Metron 7 years ago, it was based on my PhD thesis, where it was to integrate different systems and platforms in mobility. So it links also with Jean-Luc. I was working on how to interact between systems in the mobility world. It was a big challenge. And I took this idea and put it up in the industry because I saw that there was a same kind of challenges of interconnections. And my PhD was on bidirectionality. So being able to pilot systems thanks to data and thanks to decision-making tools that we built with AI, for example. But it's an example. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Vincent. And then moving on to Mark.
Yes, I'm sorry. I still am unable to get my camera to work. So
we're imagining how you look, Mark.
Okay, thank you. So I'm with Clemson University in the United States. My previous job from 2013 to 2017, I was with the U.S. Department of Energy, and I ran their advanced manufacturing programs through the Obama administration. And so digitalization was a key part of the strategy that we've had for quite a while around that. And certainly, I think the new administration is pushing in that direction. In the industrial sector, what's exciting about digitalization, we wound up standing up an entire industry consortia called the Clean Energy Smart Manufacturing Innovation Institute. And the opportunity here, often with industry, it's a really what's called a wicked problem to try and decarbonize, to wind up providing products for everybody on the planet as cost effectively as possible, as well as having companies being able to continue to grow. And digitalization is one of those wonderful tools that makes it possible to actually move forward in all three of those. You're not talking about a trade-off between those things, where it's using less energy, but that gives us less service, or it costs more for the products for the vast majority of our populations out there. This is an area where we can actually make things and have it move forward as a cleaner, less expensive, growing economy that really drives international development out there.
Excellent. Thanks so much. So for our discussion today, we have a set of 3 interesting questions to tackle. So I'll ask you to provide relatively brief interventions of a few minutes each, so that we have time to cover all the topics. And when fit, do please provide us with some real life examples and illustrations based on your extensive experience. So if we start off with our first question, which we've already partially covered, and we had that excellent presentation by Adam, but thinking on what else can we add on this topic. So what are the various applications for digitalization in industry, and how does it impact energy use and integration? And again, let's start with Jean-Luc. You're muted still, Jean-Luc, if you could unmute yourself.
He smiles, he's self-explanatory.
Thanks for the privilege of launching me in the bar, as we say in French. Well, we all know that digitalization is becoming absolutely key in many industrial sectors and for many dimensions of operation and management, and more than ever, even actually, I would say, under the current context and the lesson learned cards that will be taken from. In manufacturing, indeed, I would say that digital management systems are really the backbone of many classical departments, such as quality and purchasing. And overall, they are extremely important on the value chain that is being brought by an ecosystem. It is particularly true in the automotive sector, to which I belong, because we have one of the most global complex value chain from tier N or X to tier minus X or N up to the final customer, which is the vehicle manufacturer. This will be even more complexified when we will move from just original equipment manufacturer to mobility as a service players, because in that case, the vehicle per se won't be just the last, I would say, client to serve, but to make sure that the technology that we produce goes into the different services of mobility and that they're still functioning. So for sure, this is becoming increasingly important, and it is complexifying the needs of the digital tools. This is why we're moving from what has been relatively clear in those last years from a cloud masterized and secured data platform into more and more what will be needed in the future, devices that are applied to the edge. This is why we're talking more and more on edge computing and the impact that this will have versus Internet of Things. And this will be extremely important when the manufacturing side will have to move really to the services. So for that, we need to monitor achievements and environmental objectives, because this will create a lot of new types of chips beyond whatever it will be needed to downsize the nanometric size of the chip. But this will lead to really challenges of life cycle assessments and recyclability of all those digital components. And this will be really something that a large manufacturing sector like mine, but in many others, will have to tackle. Overall, I think that I'm confident that digitalization can lead to a greater efficiency in integrated and industrial management systems, ultimately leading to energy savings from industrial activity, but also increasing demand by part of ICT systems. For a tier like us, to give you some ideas, since you asked for illustration, the level of what we will need to decarbonize in order to be carbon neutral and to downsize the scope pre-upstream. I'm talking amongst experts here, so they understand this language. It's equivalent to what we need to downsize per one commodity of metal. Namely, what we need to recycle and decarbonize for electronics, it's pretty much what we need to decarbonize in aluminium or steel. And this is sets up enough the scene of the challenges that are ahead of us. And I don't want to be too long, but I will launch that challenge and take on this one.
Thanks so much, Jean-Luc, for this extensive insights. So Adam, I challenge you now. Can you add on anything to this already comprehensive overview that Jean-Luc provided us with?
I can only highlight what I have said. So I think integration, for me, my experience is, I mean, there could be advanced digitalization opportunities, as Jean-Luc mentioned, but I think I would like you to pay attention really to this project definition, project scope, engaging stakeholders, because many of the digitalization projects may also fail if they are wrongly designed, wrongly conceptualized. This is a big issue. So we are not using the full potential then, because something has been compromised. I think that the digital platforms for energy management, energy optimization work best when there are multiple benefits, not a single benefit, not only cost saving. Look at utility engineers that will have a benefit of better analysis in the utility plants. Look at consumers that will be able to get some transparent information about their performance. It could be engaging and so on. And economists, controllers I mentioned. Let's integrate it with the financial world. Let's convert kilowatt hours into money in a professional way. That's what I wanted to say.
So much,
Thanks.
Adam.
Still the basics, still the fundamentals before going into high oceans, high seas.
Excellent, thank you. So moving on to Vincent. Applications in digitalization for industry and the impacts on energy use and integration. Can you contribute anything further to this already the excellent overview that we have?
This is my daily challenge, doing that. No, I think the presentation that have been made are great. To emphasize on what Adam said, and we've been living this together, so not with Adam, but with the Danone Group, for example. Generally, the first question of my future clients is, what's the return of investment? And I ask them, what's your objectives? Because we are not here to just do return of investment. We are here to help on decarbonization or energy reduction journey. And we are tools to help this journey happen in a faster way, bringing value, bringing knowledge, bringing expertise and tools. But it's just like an architect, you know, you can design anything, I can do any return of investment, but the question is, what size of house do you want? What are your main definition of what you want to do? And this is pretty complex because generally, there is two things, and digitalization breaks those two things into two. There is before digitalization and after. Before digitalization, you are in a world where you are more linked to what I call religion, yes? You believe in things. You believe your status of where you are in terms of maturity. You believe that you have already done this amount of project and that you stand here. But generally, you don't have all the tools to measure really where you are. And you don't have the tools to compare your situation to other environments because of the context, because of many, many things that is really hard for you to understand where you stand. And when you digitize your plant and when you're able to really create baselines and understand where you stand, you can take after that actions, or you can plan things based on a quantitative approach. So it's not anymore religion, It's more science and decision making. And then it comes to something which is great, which is, okay, I know exactly where I'm going. I know how to go there, and I can decide whether I want to go and it's in link with my objective or not. And this first step is already a return of investment. It's already something that will bring and engage the company or the plant or the team around the same base of analysis. And this is something interesting. Just an example. I've been working with a glass manufacturing company, a big French glass manufacturing company, on their furnace, and it's the most consuming part of the factory. And we implemented our solution, which collects all the data and brings a first insight of what we can optimize. And every hour we give them the best parameters. For the same quality and same glass, we give them the best parameters to consume less energy to do that. And we have two operators in front of that. We have a young operator, 5 years of experience, and a very experienced operator, 25-year experience. The first one tells you, okay, interesting, I'll try. And the second one tells you, I know, and I will not try, because I have been doing this for the last 25 years, and I know it's the best way. And we saw in 1 year, the difference, the gap between the two in terms of operation and cost, it's around 15% of energy consumption. It's huge. And then you break myths because you're based on more quantitative approach, and you can engage the people around that. So change management, definition of objectives, all of this to prepare the project and then to follow up the project is key to make it a success. Technology and the tools are almost, and I shouldn't say that, almost a non-event linked to that.
Right. Thanks so much, Vincent. So just a recap for Mark, and very nice to see you, Mark.
Thank you.
So from our discussion, the applications for industry and in terms of digitalization, basically what we're looking at limitless and continuously evolving. At the heart of it, we have data that completely transforms how we look at energy, how we look at resources overboard, and what we can do. Digitalization as an opportunity to systematically work on decarbonization, but some things to consider moving forward. Identifying what's the project you want to design, what do you want to achieve, and designing that well. And also thinking about what are the implications of digitalization for energy use in terms of needing to focus more on recyclability and more circular economy type of issues. So do you have anything to add on to this already extensive discussion?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And I think everyone, especially Vincent before this, said you have to understand what your goals are before you try and figure out how to implement things. And digitalization by far and away has the biggest early stage impact in the industry by getting better return on invested capital. And that will wind up happening and has been a continuous process for a century or more, right? There's really nothing new there other than the speed and the interconnectivity that we wind up having. I think we have to look at the constraints of the world we live in, and this is something coming from the United States, especially the last few years. The U.S., first of all, thank you. I'm really happy on a personal basis to be back engaged in the entire Paris climate process. But I think the other big disruption that's happened relative to 40 years ago is energy is no longer a scarce commodity. It does cost money to industry, but properly oxidized or effectively oxidized, we have enough proven reserves of fossil fuel to make the planet uninhabitable. And that's actually our problem here, is how do we wind up minimizing the carbon emissions? So our real challenge here is how do we not just make our companies more profitable, and we need to be able to do that, but how through digitalization can we ensure that we're actually reducing the amount of carbon? And I think this goes beyond the level of any individual firm. If you look at the experience of COVID, it's come to the common knowledge out there. Anyone in manufacturing has known that there are supply chains, right? And we have to have understanding of supply chains. You look where carbon's emitted, it's not in the auto manufacturing, it's not in the machining businesses. It's in chemicals manufacturing, cement manufacturing, and iron reduction, blast furnace. It's not even in the steel making, it's in the blast furnace process, right? And so how do we wind up decarbonizing those? There is tremendous opportunity there. And one of the things that digitalization gives you the opportunity to do is link all the people that are using those products with the carbon footprint of their supply chain coming in. So then an automaker can actually get, otherwise the biggest energy consumption in making a car is literally drying the paint on it by the automaker themselves, which is an important energy cost to wind up producing, but it's not where the embodied energy in that car is. The embodied energy is by the steel maker and the plastics maker and the urethane manufacturer. And digitalization gives you the ability to get visibility into how those carbon footprints trickle into the end use product of our iPhones, of our cars, of all the things that we wind up using. And I think that's where the opportunity is getting that entire systems level visibility of where's energy used. Because once we can wind up doing that and where's carbon emitted, then we've got a pathway to wind up reducing these.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Mark. I couldn't agree more. That's definitely a challenge going forward, but an immense opportunity in terms of effectively decarbonizing. So moving on to our questions, and we've already touched upon these, but let's zoom in. In what way can digitalization inform energy and investment decisions within industry? And this time I won't pounce on Jean-Luc, but I will jump to Vincent.
So for me, there is always two levels in terms of energy efficiency investment and how you manage that in the long run. There is the way we were doing in the last 50 years was to buy new machines that were more efficient. So the investment was based on having a machine that has less consumption or is more efficient in the end. But again, if I link back to the digitization and what it changed here is that you have a better way to understand how your machine, your systems are consuming compared to what you're producing actually in your context. So to create really what we call a context-aware analysis of this specific machine in this specific context to make this specific recipe. And here it changes everything in terms of decision-making because you can compare, analyze, and simulate. We have in our system the possibility to do simulations and to use technology that are pretty advanced called digital twinning, for example. And it helps to understand and to see if there is a very precise difference between what you imagine as a cost reduction or an impact reduction with this new machine, and what's the reality in your context and how you're using it. And again, for me, as an energy player in this world since 7 years now, I was not an energy engineer, and I'm not still an energy engineer at the beginning, but I came with other eyes coming from the digital world. And the first thing for me was to say, hey, why don't we start by reducing the consumption of all the existing assets of this factory before going to change those systems? And this was something I saw, at least in France and in Europe when I started, and now we are in more than 20 countries. It was at first something a little bit difficult because the comparison, the understanding of the baselines was not that easy to set. So with digitization, we see a new trend. We see something more dynamic. You don't change and buy the machine after 5 years because after 5 years you will have something better. Is how can I really pilot my investment, knowing exactly what's my efficiency and where to set specific alarms or targets or where I'm passing really this ratio of impact / investment / energy reduction. So it's really more fine-tuned than before. And it can bring a lot of value. There is a lot of factories. I work in Colombia, in Brazil, for example. There is a lot of factories where they don't have access like we have in Europe or in other regions to all the support in terms of expertise from the machine providers, for example. You ask for a request to a machine provider, and then all teams are in Germany or in France, and they will respond to you when they can. And here, with those tools, they are able really to limit the impact of a problem on a machine, or really try to understand by themselves what's happening. So in terms of investment, it can really change the mindset. That's my vision, but I think it will take time to go really in that direction. But it's beginning to happen.
Thank you so much, Vincent. I'll open up to the rest of the crew to jump in and provide some additional insights.
Properly structured digital tools will help us to verify the impact of investments. So I can quote my famous example that the plant manager was complaining that his energy performance KPI for the factory was flat, even though he was investing. With the digital tools, we were able to prove him there is an impact, there's a positive impact of energy saving projects, but on the other hand, certain things, there are some headwinds like product complexity, like changing recipes, like increased losses somewhere else where the maintenance is neglected. So this tool can help to explain a lot of performance, including investment.
Excellent, thanks. Mark or Jean-Luc, anything to add before we move into the realm of policies? You're still muted, Mark, if you could.
Sorry. What Adam was just saying there, you look at the value of these integrations, it's often not just in the energy area. You look at many of the energy management tools out there, let's say ISO 50001, the value proposition is actually suddenly having a better inventory of where all the assets are within a company and getting better return on investment and return on assets. That the company can wind up monetizing that, not because of the energy savings, but because of the resource efficiency savings overall of their physical assets. And having that digitalization gives the ability for a company to wind up justifying the investment that way, where I think building on what I said before, the opportunity or the new opportunity is how this works between firms, which is to say having that digital twin that extends across supply chains. So then we can actually wind up decarbonizing the system overall.
Yeah, I agree with what my colleagues said. I mean, I'm not gonna add much of what has been said, but just to insist on the monitoring aspect that brings particularly accurate data, both real time and over time, because indeed, I like very much the example that Adam brought to the floor, because there is always room for improvement, even when managers, plant managers, are thinking that they cannot go beyond. And this is extremely important, and particularly it may be the link with the last questions of the policies, where I think that the regulation and the fact that all manufacturing corporations, whether they're small or big, are obliged to reduce their carbon footprint, they will really have to rely on the digitalization of nowadays and of the future, and also on the example that Mark pointed out on the twins, to really improve, and to improve dramatically in a monitored way that is much reinforced. I just would like to give you, maybe for the illustration, an example at Valeo. When I was fed up, and then I won't quote the country, where we had too many wastes, to talk about something else than CO2. Strangely enough, when we had a more accurate data digital setting, And then when I pushed the monitoring on a monthly basis, without doing anything, the waste has dramatically reduced and be at the level of the other plants in other countries. So it's really having, to me, it's as if it was a thermometer, but that was also doing the job of the aspirin to reduce the temperature. And this is something that is very interesting for our fellow colleagues in supply chains and in industrial workflows.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jean-Luc. So again, very much about the value of data, to understand investments, to understand where to invest, to understand energy usage and the various factors influencing it. I especially like the point about the multiple benefits. That's something that we've been discussing a lot at the International Energy Agency, and especially the challenges in quantifying and monetizing this. And so the opportunity to utilize digital tools to actually put a tangible value on these and include these into investment calculations. And again, we were discussing around how digitalization can really transform and push boundaries, and that point from Vincent in the initial intervention around better basis for decision making and the opportunity to really fundamentally change mindsets and culture when it comes to investments. So very, very inspiring and thought-provoking interventions there. And Mark, you touched upon sort of policies and sort of regulatory frameworks and your proposition around how we could leverage digitalization to decarbonize whole value chains. What are your thoughts around the policies that we need to enable this and to enable companies to really leverage the opportunities that digitalization can unlock?
So thank you. I think looking at some of the policies that you had in the read ahead, for instance, is discussion of the Clean Energy Ministerial in 2016 made a commitment globally to get 50,000 locations having ISO 50001 adoption, which is nothing more than, I mean, it's an important thing, but it's a strategic energy management approach that winds up getting firms talking to each other in the same language. It's essentially, an accounting language, for lack of a better term. Everyone's got to use the same terminology in the same way. Otherwise, they're talking past each other. Now, within that, I think that's an admirable goal, and I think we have something like 20,000 locations worldwide. There's a number on that. However, if you look at that, there are less than 20 individual facilities worldwide that have adopted ISO 50001 in energy-intensive industries of steel, chemicals, or cement. It's an energy management tool that's not being used in where energy is used. It's being used across manufacturing in things like product assembly areas, vehicle assembly. It's great that's being done in that area. It drives productivity. But how do we wind up getting it adopted more broadly as a tool within energy intensive industries? And then once we do that, we then suddenly get to a point where we can get visibility and understanding, a shared understanding of where's energy and carbon emissions happen. So as a policy, what I don't think would work is having it being a nation by nation, having this a national policy issue. I think having a best practice on purchasing, so you treat this similar to how the quality initiative went worldwide 30, 40 years ago, where suddenly the purchase agents and companies said, if you're not ISO 9000 certified, you cannot supply products to our company. We need to get to that mindset relative to energy policies, where a company literally says in their sustainability goals they're publishing, we will only purchase by X date. You can't do it overnight, but let's say by 2030, we will only purchase from suppliers that are ISO 50001 certified. Then we'll get visibility, and then it's private sector mechanism to wind up getting that traceability. But it comes through using the purchasing power that the companies have that are committed to energy efficiency and carbon reduction, but that then drives down into their supply chains as a result. I think that would have a huge impact, and it's bearing out right now. And it's terrific that ISO 50001 is being used, but it's just not being used in that 60% of industry that actually emits carbon and uses energy.
So as a follow-up, Mark, do you see this happening voluntarily by industries? Will momentum build up through peer pressure and through the industry-driven initiatives? Or are incentives needed from national or other policies?
There's probably some incentives needed. There's probably some visibility needed. I've actually been just trying to trace. I've got a couple of students that are tracing where are their energy efficiency savings in ISO 50001. What's interesting looking at in the energy intensive industry, so cement, steel, and chemicals. If you look at it, the energy efficiencies as a percentage actually is smaller in most of those industries when you apply ISO 50001, which sounds like you're saying, well, it doesn't matter as much, but you're working at a much larger, a 5% savings on an industry that's emitting half of the carbon in the economy is a big number relative to a 20% carbon emission savings in a sector that uses a small amount of energy, right? It's the low-hanging fruit's easy to get kind of thing. How do we go after that hard to decarbonize approaches? And then you wind up running those as efficiently as possible. It's a combination of strategic energy management and ISO 50001. I will say most of those companies already have, you look at a large chemical factory, they have an incredible digitalization strategy to begin with, just because you are not going to be able to operate that factory efficiently and effectively. And you've got a huge economic driving force to make sure it's as digitalized as possible and driving down those energy costs, because it is a very real cost for them. And so how do you wind up linking that to more of a broader standard, I think is our next challenge out there. I don't think it's necessarily hard. It's obviously capital investment out there, but we need greater visibility for governmental policies out there on what winds up working, what doesn't work. So individual firms that are considering these investments have a baseline to say, hey, my competitors use this, or people in a parallel industry use this, and they wind up getting a better return on investment for their shareholders. How do you get that greater visibility out there? I think it's, perhaps you tie this into, regulatory structures for publicly held companies when they wind up making statements in their public disclosures about sustainability. How do they wind up putting, how do they have validity to that? And it's not just greenwashing. I mean, that's to some extent what things like ISO 50001 wind up doing. It gets beyond cheerleading and gets to real, it's a mechanism to actually validate that you are reducing carbon and energy usage.
Okay, great, Mark. I'll open up to the rest of the group to provide some insights on around policies and what sort of policies could help propel progress forward.
I would raise one narrow idea within the policy spectrum, which is in the field of technical assistance for the countries, for different industrial sectors, is to consider the digital tools as a part of the training or the technical advice. I can tell you, I was struggling in many regions where I was delivering also by myself training on energy efficiency, best practice on energy conservation, whatever. How to ensure that this knowledge transfer is sustained. Digital tool with the digital support, so supervision. Someone is staying behind the software in the cloud and monitoring the situation and keeps on advising the site, keeps on confirming if the site has adopted the knowledge from the training. This could be very powerful, I can tell you. I do not see it is coming. It's typically disconnected. The experts are coming, delivering the training, and the digital tools are coming along maybe later, but no one is talking to each other. And this could be an integrated proposal. Also with the public money, why not? To popularize, to make the pilots, to make the demonstration projects. So
thanks so much, Adam, for another excellent suggestion. Vincent or Jean-Luc, anything to add from your side?
Thank you. From my side, I think that to set up objectives that are not necessarily the ones related to the digital, but what digital as an enabler can bring to strengthen the objectives requested. And this goes back to my initial point to ally the digital as being an enabler and an ally to the green. And this will accelerate certain digital adoptions, because in many cases, the monitoring of data, the use of many digital roadmap tools will help enormously the adoption from this digital. So this to me is very, very important. To maybe complement what Adam said on the policy, I have the experience to lead 2 huge European Commission programs. For sure, this is something really exceptional that we have in this continent. And yesterday I was in a Zoom meeting with United States new energy secretary, and I'm very impressed of what the new administration is putting ahead, also on electrification, on digitalization. But for sure, talking to you, Vida, on energy efficiency, or in the framework of UNIDO, that is very much pushing the other countries, and certainly, unfortunately, not the most developed ones in the world, we need to ensure some pilot lines between richer countries, or even I am thinking of a pilot that I did between EU and India that has been extremely useful on that sense. So to know that we need to push international cooperation on base projects and where to bring a bit of money there, because otherwise we will have a very unbalanced situation worldwide.
Excellent points there, Jean-Luc. Thank you. Vincent, the picture, anything more you can add to all these already?
There is not much I can add. Just to confirm what you say, Jean-Luc, is that well, in our perspective, in my perspective, we work a lot in different countries. We don't work so much in the US. We work a little bit, of course, in Europe, but also in Latin America, in Asia, and beginning in India. And we see the discrepancies in terms of how I say that, in terms of everything, in terms of technologies, in terms of mindset, in terms of knowledge, in terms of many different things. For example, I'm struggling in Southeast Asia to hire energy efficiency experts, for example. The only one I can find in the industry in this concept are coming from other countries. So we see that also in terms of education, in terms of universities, in terms of many things, there is a lot of different discrepancies between the different regions. So it's not just about digital, it's about a sort of full package of energy optimization and decarbonization journey. It starts by the project and how you set it and how you're aware of the different challenges and how you pilot that, to technologies and policies after that. But we try to bring our knowledge in the different regions, and we see the gaps in different parts. So I don't know if policies are going to be, because each country will have its own policy. Even in Europe, you will have different levels inside the same zone of policies. So the question will be more on how do we make this more an industrial standard, more than just a regulation or a policy in the end. Like you said, Mark, on the ISO 50001, how we make it appear as a must and not a nice to have. And this is where it's kind of tricky to really create this momentum on that. 7 years ago, when I was speaking about ISO 50001, people was looking at me at, what are you talking about? And now today, it's more, okay, I want to be certified tomorrow. Okay, there is something in between that needs to be made. It's how we build something stable for you in the very near future, but not tomorrow, maybe after tomorrow. But so it's how we create this industry base for everyone to be like the ISO the ISO certifications. Today they are just musts, and how to create that. It's I don't have the solution, obviously, but I really think it will be the enabler to create a homogeneous basis for the business in general.
Yeah. I just have to say, Vincent, I'm impressed. If 7 years ago you were talking about ISO 50001, it was published in 2013, so that was, in its infancy.
Same year, I created Metro in 2013.
Yeah.
So it was really the beginning, and as every small startup, you look at what's the state of the art, and it was the state of the art in 2013. It was something that was just published, and we said, hey, it's great. And when we talked about that, well, we saw that it was something very, very limited in terms of impact for the moment. So slowly we pushed that in front, and we made our role to promote that.
Yeah.
So we're almost out of time, but a quick follow-up question in this space of regulations, policies. So we've touched upon the value of leveraging digitalization to decarbonize across whole value chains, and of the opportunities that large companies have in terms of purchasing, in terms of requirements along their supply chains. Is there anything from a policy regulatory standpoint that could provide incentives for companies to do this, or do you think that will happen on its own?
So Vida, I will mention just from the experience I've gone through over the last several years in the United States. I'm not sure having national policies that mandate these sort of things are going to be effective, because at least in the United States, and we are a large industrial, second largest manufacturing sector in the world, right? It's just an equation to get caught up into a pendulum swinging back and forth and arguments. And we need to get beyond that. So how do we find market-based solutions? I think within that, instead of regulations, I think having clear and transparent rules. So having transparency about financial disclosures related to this, having transparency on governance structures at the corporate level that get into, especially for publicly held firms, what are their responsibilities, so we can get beyond greenwashing, is probably going to be actually more effective than coming in and saying you have to meet this emission level at this level. If you say, if you want to raise money on our public markets and you don't want to be guilty of securities fraud, if you claim energy efficiency, you need to back that up with data. And I think that's the way, at least for the United States, the direction that would go. I think that's a huge opportunity. If you look at policies, what Jean-Luc mentioned, though, was the issue of education. I think all of our nations, and UNIDO can be involved in that. If you look at as an outcome of digitalization, this means that the country that educates their people better, and it's not just the PhD education, it is the two-year colleges, it's the the rank and file worker, the countries that are able to wind up, we're in a race between technology and education, I think is how one of my colleagues phrased it in one of his books recently. This is what the race is internationally, and it's necessary for us to decarbonize because we need that skill set all the way down to everyone working in the manufacturing sector. So, education actually is the silver bullet on these things. So.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much. And I'll take this opportunity to sincerely thank all of you for this productive and stimulating discussion. And we have exactly 2 minutes to return to the plenary. So once again, thank you for sharing your experiences, your insights, and we're looking forward to continued dialogue and continued progress in this area. Thank you.
Hi, so my name is Ali Hassan Begi from Global Efficiency Intelligence. I'll be moderating this session on country voices related to digitalization and innovation. We are a consulting firm in the US focusing on industrial energy efficiency and decarbonization of manufacturing sector. And today with me, I have 5 distinguished speakers who will be doing most of the talking, and I'll be doing more of the listening. I've been given a short bio of each speaker. I'm just gonna go ahead and first introduce our speakers. I feel like the bios were a little long, so I'm gonna just read parts of it. I hope you don't mind. So we have Mr. Mohammed Tamer Chakla. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Mohammed is leading the performance management team at the National Center Cooling Company, focusing on energy management and process optimization. He has over 11 years of diversified experience in the energy sector, working on oil and gas and district cooling industries, while holding different roles in different departments in the company. And also we have, I don't know if Joey joined us. Joey, are you there? Sorry, Joe Ritchie. I'm not sure if Joe is here. Okay, I see his name. Joe Ritchie. Joe is currently the manager of wholesale and retail electricity markets team at the Australian Government Department of Industry, Science and Energy and Resources. Prior to this, Joe was working as an energy policy analyst at IEA. Also, we have Wolfgang Hubernick, I hope I pronounced that correctly, from Austrian Institute of Technology. Wolfgang has extensive experience in the energy sector or in the energy field. More recently, since 2018, Wolfgang has been head of the AIT Center for Energy, responsible for its scientific, economic, and strategic development. Also, we have here Ms. Robin Lucas from Open Energy. Robin joined Open Energy in 2016 and is the head of data science. She works on demand-side flexibility in the UK electricity network, modeling, forecasting, and optimizing the usage and performance of the variety of distributed energy resources. I'm hearing some background noise. If you could mute your speaker, that would be great. So, and last, certainly not the least, we have Mr. Danila Selikanov from Magnitogorsk Iron and Steelworks. Danila is a chief of innovation center at the steel company. He came to this steel company first as the head of the Center for Energy Saving Technologies, and then worked his way up to become the head of the Center for Innovation. And he is the national UNIDO expert since 2013. So this is a very brief introduction to our 5 speakers today. Just a few housekeeping items. Again, if you are not speaking, please mute yourself so we don't hear any background noise. And if you have questions, please go ahead and type your question in chat box. I'll be monitoring them, and later on in the session, we will ask the question from the speakers. And if you want your question to be addressed to a particular speaker, please go ahead and mention that in your comment as well. So with that, I've been given 3 questions to ask and basically generate the discussion. But before jumping into the question, just wanted to spend a few minutes. I feel like the plenary, while it was great, I feel like the scope was quite narrow and didn't quite presented a broader scope of what we mean here. Digitalization, or as we also call Industry 4.0, mostly in Europe. In US, they call it more smart manufacturing. It goes way beyond, I feel like, the systems and items that was mentioned in the plenary session. So things like, Internet of Things, mobile devices, advanced sensors, big data analytics, platform, augmented reality, data visualization. I mean, there's a long list. Usually the technologies can be kind of categorized into 4 major categories of cyber physical systems, Internet of Things, on-demand availability of computer system resources, and cognitive computing. I'm sure our experts will give you way more information on these, but I would like our experts to go hopefully way beyond what was presented in plenary, and especially on more cutting edge emerging technology, because the title of this session is, or the whole webinar is, Digitalization and Innovation. When we talk about innovation, we want to be cutting edge, more, not talk about rather conventional established technologies. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think it would be good to talk about the more emerging items. Also, I would like to ask our speakers, as the session title is Country Voices, try to be more specific to the projects you have done, the case studies you have, and don't be general, be very specific, talk based on your experience with particular country, particular project, particular study, to basically highlight what are the key challenges and what are the key opportunities there for innovation to tackle those challenges, and what lesson learned and what to be done. Those are the things I think would be good to touch upon and take away from this session. So I have 3 questions. I think 2 of them are rather related, so I'm going to ask those 2 first, and I will give each of you 4 or 5 minutes. Please stay within that time frame. And then we will go to after that discussion, we will go to the 3rd question, which is related to policy, and I will give you again a couple of minutes to address the policy. But to start, the first 2 questions are, what are various applications for digitalization in industry? And how does it impact energy use and integration? A related question is, in what way can digitalization inform energy and investment decisions within industry? So basically, various applications and how it can impact energy use and integration, and then that relation with energy and investment in industry sector. Okay, so those are the questions. Maybe we can go ladies first. Robin, do you want to start and tell us more based on your experience?
Sure, lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting me. So I work for Open Energy. We've been doing demand-side response on various industrial and commercial loads for the last decade or so in the UK market. So we've integrated with various different industries, so a lot in the aggregate sector, a lot in the water sector, using industrial processes which heat, pump or cool. And we gather a load of data from those sites. So we have a lot of metering, and we integrate with on-site equipment like SCADA and PLC controllers for those the equipment on site. We bring all of that data into our database, and then we optimize those assets. We take control of them when we're permitted to. So we set control bands of things like temperature or pressure. And then we're able to flex those assets in order to reduce the cost of their energy consumption or reduce the carbon intensity of their energy function, or operator. And yeah, what we've really found are crucial in doing that is having the metering on site and having an effective integration with those assets and being able to bring the data back. So we have a cloud-based platform and having things like 3G or 4G networks where you can bring that data back in a reliable manner and you don't lose sites, lose comms with sites in more remote places, for example. And if you have a really good and regular source of data from those sites, you can do things like forecast their consumption accurately. And this allows you to provide, to train machine learning models, which then you can spot energy efficiency measures. So quite often we've found, if we find certain assets are consuming far more power than they used to, because we've got some trends of that data over a long period of time, we can spot that there might be something wrong with that asset and then alert the site manager to go and replace, I don't know, it might be filaments in a bitumen tank, for example. And sort of on the other side of that is the more market-facing side of things. So we're all about flexibility and enabling those big industrial sites to use as much green power as possible. So flexing their consumption to when the wind is blowing or when the sun is shining, or if there's co-located generation on that site, flexing that demand to when the sun is shining on that site in particular. So we can have some local controls in place in order to do that. And increasingly in the last few years, as battery prices have come down, the price of lithium-ion storage with the advent of electric vehicles, we're seeing more and more co-located battery storage on site. And batteries are much, much easier to integrate with and control because they're specifically for these kind of purposes. Whereas integrating with a 30-year-old water pump is a little bit more difficult, and you get availability dropouts quite regularly, and site issues happen. Whereas a battery is purposefully for increasing the amount of self-consumption on the site or providing services to national grid, the electricity system operator. And yeah, we're seeing more and more of these kind of sites where we're getting a co-located battery, which we can optimize. And really what we need to grow that, the amount of batteries we're seeing on these sites is the policy framework and the market opportunities to make that really worthwhile commercially. So in the United Kingdom, we used to have something called a triad, which was the 3 half hours of energy use over the whole year, where the electricity price would spike to something like 1,000 times the normal price, and that would act as a very strong price signal for particularly industrial sites to reduce their consumption over the winter evening peak. So during cold days, particularly in the winter. And that was a very effective way of nationwide, you see a much reduced consumption during that. So yeah, having these kind of really strong price signals which allow the commercials in order to work to install this equipment, because it's not cheap and it can take quite a long time to actually integrate and understand alongside the site what's going on, and feed that information back in and actually make these things pay off. So yeah, I'll leave it there for the time being. I think you're muted.
No,
Sorry. I encourage people to mute themselves. I hear sometimes background noise. Thank you so much, and you did a great job of staying within our 5 minutes time frame. Very interesting, actual, practical, real-world cases and experiences, which I think would be great to hear also from other folks on the panel. So Wolfgang, do you want to tell us more for your perspective on this matter based on the work you have done in Austria and other countries?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the invitation here. Yeah, so as you already mentioned during the intro, I'm working in research and innovation. So Austrian Institute of Technology is the largest applied research organization in Austria. But, and of course here within the Center for Energy, one of our key focus areas is industrial energy systems. So, but beside of our work here at the Austrian Institute of Technology, I'm also responsible for a innovation program called New Energy for Industry that is currently running in Austria. Consists of currently, so I put the web page here in the chat. This is an innovation program consisting of around 17 projects aiming for a decarbonization of industrial processes here in Austria. Basically 3 goals: decarbonization of complete decarbonization of the Austrian industrial energy system. Of course, then added value made in Austria. So we want to develop Austrian technologies that are then compatible on the international market in the green tech sector. And of course, it's also about the securing of the Austrian industry location. So in Austria, around 1/3 of the final energy demand is out from the industry sector. So this is quite important in Austria. It's also important to maintain the industrial side Austria. And in terms of digitalization, I think there are different aspects where digitalization comes into play when it's about decarbonization. So first is of course, and that's obvious, is the increase of energy efficiency. And then we have first the low-hanging fruits. So it's about to leverage the known potentials, for example, to utilize waste heat and things like that. And I think here information technology or digitalization comes in mainly in terms of optimization of processes and also having the data available for all the processes. And this is then the basic tool in hand to go for that goal. And then it's also about the new potentials for energy efficiency. And that is a very interesting area we're working in. This is, for example, changing processes to achieve higher energy efficiency. So one example for that might be the integration of high temperature heat pumps in for example, drying processes, medium temperature processes, also the integration of thermal storages. And where digitalization comes into play in this field is mainly in a new processes for planning and operation of these modified processes. Yeah, so we apply digital tools to optimize those new topologies of industrial processes, and of course we use digital technologies for developing the operation schemes. For example, by integrating a high temperature heat pump into a drying process in food industry, for example. So this is one aspect. So this is the part of energy efficiency where we are working on. And the other thing, of course, is working on the integration of renewables. So to get rid of fossil energy, we have to integrate renewable energy, or basically we have to do full fuel switching and electrification of processes. And here the issue comes in that we need to handle the fluctuations of renewable production somehow. Yeah, and so this means also that industry changes its border of business. Yeah, so industry, energy intense industry has an additional business model in the energy business, and this has to be also supported by digital technologies. For example, to operate the markets for renewable energy for flexibility. Yeah, so this is a big issue we are working on. We call it great integration of industry. And then on the other side is how industry can interact with the energy markets, or how flexibility can be managed in industrial processes. And here, of course, digital technology can help to explore the flexibility potential, so the energetic flexibility potential of industrial processes, to participate to, for example, short-term flexibility markets. And but the other hand, there's issues that are not existing out in the energy markets. So a big issue when we're looking into the future of a surely decarbonized energy system, we will have a large summer-winter seasonal problem. Yeah. So I think there is a huge potential of, for example, utilization of seasonal flexibility, energy flexibility. And to be honest, there is no market out there yet for these issues, and there is no reward for industry for going into that field. But I think thinking, for example, into pulp and paper industry, this could be a huge potential for such industry. And of course, digital technologies will be required to go for that goal.
Thank you, Wolfgang. Very interesting. I was not aware of this major program happening in Austria. And on the point of renewable energy integration, I think that relates to what Robin was talking earlier with regards to energy storage and use of, data analytics to try to tackle that issue with intermittency of renewables and fluctuations of demand as well as supply. So thank you. Let's go to Russia. Danila, are you based in Russia?
Yes, hello, in Magnitogorsk, in the Ural region, in the sense of Russia.
Yes, hi. So why don't you tell us more the industry perspective of this? Like you are working with and in an industrial company. So maybe you can share your perspective with regards to these questions. Thank you.
Yes, I work on Magnitogorsk Iron and Steel Works. It is the biggest steel plant in Russia. Makes maybe in average 20 million tons of steel per year. And of course, for us, energy saving and digitalization is same in the last 2 years, because we use the same technological to save energy and to save another materials and so on. And the last 3 years, we have a big program in Industry 4.0. We use such technological as big data, digital twins, digital shadows, IoT, industrial Internet of Things, to make more precision analyzing data, collect data. For example, I take in hand the small sensor, which we use for to monitor the drive consumption of energy per drive, electricity drive. But this sensor cannot know any connection, any cables. We use it with magnetic fields to measure all the parameters. But we have 100,000 of electricity drives on the plant, and if we have the cheapest solution from industrial Internet of Things, we can install in each drive such box and collect very big data. And after that, after we collect this big data, we can make the mathematical model of production. We can mathematical model of consumption of energy from each drive. We have a biggest drive like 20 megawatts and small drive like 1 kilowatts, and about 18% of energy consumption, electricity consumption from our plant is electricity from drives. And now we have installed more than 1,000 sensors to this drive, and we can make the digital twin of a big line, big technological line, using the industrial Internet of Things. It is a big step to the digitalization for us. Of course, we have the mathematics, many specialists which collect the data and try to find the optimum line for production level, for energy consumption level. Another way, we have 3 biggest plants which produce more than 800 megawatts per hour. And we go through the classical automatization level, but last 3 years we use artificial intelligence to optimize the energy consumption, gas consumption, and producing the electricity on these plants. Another way, we use mathematical methods like the IBM iLog program software to optimize our maintenance program. We're trying to find the optimum point in sorry for my English. I have no practice for 2 years, maybe. Okay,
it's okay.
We're trying to find the optimum point in maintenance, in which way we have to spend our money, our resources of our specialists, in which way, and step by step we have to maintain our big boilers and turbines to make the cash flow maximized as well. This is a mathematical model, very, very big and strong mathematical models, which contains more than 30,000 specific data from each device, each turbine, each boiler, each drive, and then so on. And after that, we try to make the mathematical calculation to find the optimum.
So,
okay.
Daniel, sorry, I'm trying to be mindful of time. I know you have so many cases to talk about, but I wanted to ask you a quick question I think many people probably have in mind. Like often, these digitalization options, they face, the cost issue and other barriers, but looks like you guys have been implementing quite a few of these technologies and options. What was the driver? Like, how did you manage? Is it the commitment from top management? Are these all cost effective? Can you tell us maybe in like 2 minutes, what made this happen in your company?
I think the first step was in 2015 when I came to Magnitogorsk, and we saved more than $40 million without any investing, only in business process of only using the right KPIs and using right business model to estimate the efficiency of our power plants. For example, we don't use a specific consumption modeling. We use only value modeling, rubles as well. This is a UNIDO methodic, and we make our own platform for energy management system, and we win many medals and so on. Our platform is the best in Russia, I think. And after that, our top management said, okay, you did it without any money, try to spend some money and show us another cases. After that, we have all our resources on hand, and we will go in every type of technological which we know in the market. But our comeback period for all our project is about 2 years. It is.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very interesting. I would like to hear more about that, but we don't have time much. Let's go to UAE and hear from Mohammed. You have done, I think, a lot of also practical project in this field. Maybe you can tell us more of your experiences. Thank you.
Sure. So thank you very much, Ali, and it's a pleasure meeting you all on this platform. I would start first generically speaking, because I think this would set the way moving forward of what I want to say. I think speaking about digitalization, going back to energy management, I would emphasize on the pillars of energy management. For me, the first pillar is visualization. If you're blind on your process, you can't do anything. You can't go ahead and, as Daniela said, for example, implement operational excellence activities or do any modifications. So visualization is very important to understand your process, the disturbances on your process, and what's affecting it, especially like in our industry. We work in district cooling as a district cooling provider in UAE, where we're one of the biggest worldwide, and we have plants geographically scattered all over UAE and GCC, where we provide cooling to our customers, and chilled water plants. So it's very important to us to have visuals on these data, and I'll go through what we've done. Now, the second step for me, the meaningful step is, yes, you have now the data, you have the insights, you need to do the analytics. And the analytics part is very important to understand what's going on, model it, and then also predict and forecast, because a lot of stuff are related on customers' behavior or weather conditions, and they are all interrelated and correlated with each other. Understanding those correlations and exploiting them would help you in the next pillar, which is the implementation. Setting your correct and adequate operational excellence exercises, or even going one step further into the energy management pyramid towards implementing dynamic control schemes or control schemes to ensure that your energy conservation measures are implemented and are dynamically assessed. And that would take us to the last pillar, which is measurement and verification. And you can see, before saying that, you can see that each point is important by itself, and each point is integrated with each other, and each point has its own digital transformation or a bunch of digital transformation initiatives embedded. Measurement and verification is very important, and a very good example that Daniela said is the organization would want to understand, yes, we've spent this amount of money, and the dollar sign is very important, but what did you gain? So without measurement and verification, you are not sure that whatever you've implemented actually gave you results. And this is one of the biggest challenges. I don't know if you want to discuss challenges now or later, but that's it's up to you, Ali. You can stop me if you want, but I think one of the biggest challenges in any organization is you don't want to digitalize, you want to digitally transform. Maybe I'll elaborate later on, and if we have more time to speak on. But a lot of companies would fail doing just buying those softwares, doing the initiatives, but not actually implementing it and catching those fruits out of the trees. So I think this would also help you on a higher level in decision making, because all these data are streamed into very scientific models that can give you very good predictions on what do you expect on your efficiencies, what do you expect if, let's say, I go ahead and do a retrofit in my plant, or I change a pump with constant speed, I went into a VFD. Now I have a very scientific and strongly based financial model to say, you know what, this is my investment, this is my return of investment. So when I go to management, I would be very confident in saying that. And this is leveraging on the data that I have, leveraging on the analysis models, and the big data analytics that was done in the background. If this was not available, a lot of decisions would be made based on rule of thumbs or engineering assumptions. This is 3 to 5% of savings, and we build our assumptions and ROIs based on this. So I think this is where digital transformation has its true opportunities. One very good example is COVID-19. Without digital transformation, we might, I see all of you guys, most of you, you're talking from your homes. So it made all organizations more agile and resilient towards the change. My company was very successful in implementing that. We had times where there were no one in the offices. We had times where, for us, let me go one step back. As a performance management team, we look at the energy management of our plants scattered all over UAE and some in GCC. So for us, during the lockdowns, it was very hard because you can't go to the plant, but because we did some initiatives on plant historians and remote monitoring systems, we were able to sit at home, look at our processes, find where we can improve, and we were very resilient in doing that, and we were not impacted in a sense. So digital transformation can help you be more resilient and more proactive, more efficient in taking your decisions. It's very hard when you don't have that real-time monitoring strategy or real-time monitoring tools, for example, correct reporting, to take a proactive action. it might take you a long time until you actually collect the data, analyze it, and resolve it, rather than if you manage to do that and automate it, you can be very proactive, give the action, and resolve it directly before another problem actually occurs.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
A lot of stuff that the breed did is within this. Maybe later on I'll go into the details within the speech, but this is what I wanted to highlight for that topic.
Thank you very much. It's during COVID, certainly companies that they were more digitally transformed or prepared, they could perhaps handle the crisis better, both within their own company, but also within their supply chain, vertically and horizontal supply chain. I think that was very critical, and one of the lessons learned to be more resilient. And certainly digitalization is one of the technology options that they have to help with this resiliency. Let's go to Australia. Joe, sorry, last, certainly not the least. Let's hear from your experiences and the work you guys have done in Australia. I don't know if your examples are from there or from other places. Please. You're mute. Joe, sorry, you're mute. That happens to me a lot. It shows you are mute. Yeah, I guess sometimes digitalization takes control.
The new norm now, yeah. It's always happening.
Yeah. Perhaps your your headset. Still showing you are mute.
I have a specific problem with Yandex. I tried to go through Google and the problem was solved. Maybe.
Okay.
John, maybe you have the same problem. Try Google, maybe.
Sorry, I'm clicking unmute. So it is still showing you are mute, Joe. I don't know if they told me if you have a problem, just refresh the page. Do you want to do that and see if it works, Joe, for you? Okay. Okay. In the meantime, okay. I don't know if it's. Yeah, this happens. Actually, yeah, while he's trying to figure out, let's move on to next question. I will definitely come back to Joe and give him the time. Joe, you can try to figure out the technical issue. We will move on and then we'll get your insights later. So the next question that we have is on policy. It's saying what kind of policies are needed to accelerate the adoption of digital technologies in industry, and give a specific example based on your experience. Actually, just today I came across a report just published by actually Austrian Energy Agency. So your fellow Austrian, Wolfgang. So the report title is on motor system. It says report on an electric motor system survey on digitalization in electric motor system. They did an extensive survey to see what are the barriers and drivers. And some of the key barriers and drivers they highlighted. So I'm just reading just 2-3 lines. It says the lack of qualified staff and high investment costs are the main barriers based on their survey. So the good technical solutions for cybersecurity and availability of qualified staffs are the most viable enabler based on the views from people who were surveyed. And around 3/4 of the respondents in that survey consider the development of education programs and a standardization process to harmonize protocols and subsidies for R&D are important policy instrument. So again, this is very new publication coming from Austria based on the survey of industry. on digitalization in the modern system. So hopefully with that, we set the stage to get your views on policy, what you think has worked based on your experience or could work or is needed based on your interaction. So who has, Wolfgang, maybe that's something as a research institute you guys have looked at on the policy front. Maybe you can start.
Yeah, I mean, this is, so to be honest, I don't know this publication yet, but I mean, this is a very, very broad topic. I mean, this goes from the issues you mentioned, like qualification and whatever, to I mean, it's the other side also related to the business time frame of the business models of industry. Yeah, if industry wants a return on investment within 2 years, some solution that are aiming for energy efficiency or decarbonization might fail, right, by design. Yeah, so this is one issue where maybe then contracting models might be a solution to overcome that. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the issue of digitalization as a one instrument to go for decarbonization, I think it's like always when we go for energy transition, it's all about the energy price. It's about the price of carbon emissions, yeah, and it's also about non-existing markets for products like flexibility. I mean, these are issues that are out there, and so it's also a big discussion, especially in an energy-intense industry, how to reinvest the earnings of specific schemes into those industries. I mean, we're looking at the issue of transformation of the steel production sector, which is also very important for Austria. There's a big discussion going on how to, or how to reinvest the money into the transformation of the steel production process. I think this is a very wide issue. Of course, out of my core responsibility, innovation is key. And in Austria, we are now very much challenged with the situation that quite some money goes into direct instruments like funding of measures with basically no multiplicator behind. Yeah, and so innovation in certain energy or digitalization technologies, I think, would be, of course, a very, very important factor to go for more energy and or emission performance for industry.
Thank you. Thank you, Wolfgang. So we have 12 minutes left and we have to go to the plenary. So I would request you to keep it to maybe 2-3 minutes. Why don't you just maybe focus on 2-3 policies that you think are needed or could be most impactful, specifically when it comes to digitalization industry 4.0. Robin, do you want to tell us your thoughts on policies?
Yeah, kind of picking up on what Wolfgang was saying, it's really important to have an effective place for things like flexibility in specifically demand side assets, because there's a huge potential for flexibility from industrial sites and in the steel industry or in the paper industry, but there's not necessarily a home for those. So having a clear and effective policy that's going to be stable and sort of clear and going to be in place for enough time that it takes to install on these sites, understand them and get that payback. Quite often we have got it installed up to a technical spec, and then during the process of that program running out, the technical requirements have changed, and that creates all sorts of havoc. So having, you know, longer term policy decisions that are very clear to give you a clear cause for investment is really important, I would say. And yeah, we need to encourage the innovation and the flexibility projects, and having innovation funding available, I think, is important as well.
Okay, thank you. By the way, I'm monitoring the question. I don't see that many questions. That's why I'm giving more time to talk. I think Joe still has problem with the technical. Let's go to Danila. What are you thinking in terms of policies? Like, were there any policies that kind of help you guys in this Industry 4.0 digitalization transformation?
I think main policy for us, maybe for Russia, or maybe for the whole world, the policy in education. Because now we have all our staff which have the design thinking dedicated at 12, 20, 30, 50 years ago. They pattern behaviors are not digital. And we have a new specialist, a young specialist, which new patterns of behavior, digital patterns. And for them, all the new technology must be as a basic level. For us, it's because we can't change the big cases in industry because of behavior, because of behaviors.
Yeah.
Of course, for me, I am not young specialist.
You look young.
Some things and new things, digital things, for me is very difficult in my age. But for the youngest man, which is compare the IT segments with energy segments, with production segments, so they have a new design thinking, and we have to change the habits. We have to change our specialists, and for them, in their education, we have to mix the base level mathematics, physics, chemistry, and some technological parts with digital industry, with product with a new knowledge in product owning, in processing knowledge, management knowledge, and digital knowledge. And these specialists, when they came to our plants, they will make the big cases in the energy and in the production level, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting. I thought young people like the new technology, but looks like you are saying it's otherwise. But I understand your perspective. There's a question, maybe I can take that to Mohammed. The question is saying, is there any legislation or policies on Industry 4.0, smart manufacturing, digitalization, whatever you want to call it, in your respective country? So Mohammed, is there anything you have come across, or if anybody here has seen anything in your country that kind of target that? Like in US DOE has a lot of support on R&D for, we call it smart manufacturing here. I guess that's kind of a policy. So Mohammed, what are your thoughts? If you don't have any example on that, maybe you can tell us your policy favorite.
I think answering the question on legalization is, I don't think there is restriction except for cybersecurity. I'm not an expert in that, but I know there's a lot of implementation in UAE. UAE has drawn a very good pathway to in the digital transformation. I think they've taken very good steps. On the government side, on the industry side, there are a lot of policies in UAE that are pushing industries forward to implement energy conservation measures across all industries. For example, the chilled water industry itself, because we're kind of in a hot climate, and there it is like heating in Europe. So it's very important to, and it consumes around 70% of the electrical consumption in UAE. So I think there are a lot of policies to encourage industries to shave and try to reduce their electrical consumption. And I think this is the main driver for us to move even more and explore more areas. As everyone said, innovation. Policies on innovation, opening the space for people to integrate their knowledge, to share their knowledge across borders. That's also very important. We've done a lot of implementations, as I said, in kind of connectivity, having insights from the plants. I don't think we ran into legislation issues, except, as I said, definitely there is cybersecurity involved, but nothing that I really stumbled into.
Okay, thank you. Joe, are you there, or did you? I see you as in the list of people. Did you call in, Joe? I guess he still has a technical problem. Unfortunately, we are also getting towards the end of our call. So one question I wanted to raise to the group on, I don't see Joseph. Looking at the on the financing. Have you come across any financing scheme, Robin, or I don't know, others that government provides certain incentive for implementation of the digitalization technology or Industry 4.0, something like that? Whether on implementation, whether or R&D.
In the UK, there's a big green infrastructure fund, which I think is part funded by the government, and there's a lot of private investment and green funds that are really trying to invest in the space. And it's very clear that the investment community want to invest, and they need to be comfortable enough with these business models in order to do that. And we're seeing increasingly that banks are willing to finance big battery projects. I think it's probably a little bit more challenging and it would have to come from board level of big industrial companies. But shareholders very much want to see these energy efficiency and green recovery programs going into place. It's just making them commercially viable and getting the investment community on board and banks comfortable with, say, merchant risk trading models, for example. That you might not get a very solid 2-year payback, but you will have a liquid enough market to be able to justify spending the OPEX on a big, the CAPEX on a big project.
Right.
It's becoming comfortable with the different business models and the revenue stacks that you can get, which justify financing these things.
Thank you. That's really interesting. Daniela, maybe perhaps a last question. As an industrial company, what kind of policy you would like to see that could make you guys even kind of more expedite this digitalization transformation and more implement this Industry 4.0 smart manufacturing kind of technologies in your plan? Any policy that you hope Russian government would have in place that could support you?
So we are big private company. We have a lot and enough resources to make our digitalization by ourselves without any government support. But our government have a big program in energy saving and in digitalization. They support the universities, support the small companies, small startups. We have Skolkovo, which place where the startups have their first steps, and government have support for them. We make support for them. We can use results of the support. We see the startups and we take their solutions for us. Take specialists, younger specialists from these startups. Maybe for us, governments. Not enough support from the government. We need it. Yeah. We have enough support from our legacy and so on.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you very much to all our speakers. Unfortunately, Joe had a problem, technical problem, so couldn't hear from him. Hopefully next time. But thank you all for giving all your insight. We are going to go back to the plenary session and basically wrap up the session there. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. Or good afternoon, or whichever part of the world you are in.
Good morning.
Hey.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hey.
Okay. So maybe I think we are still waiting for Enrico, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yes, I guess so.
Okay, so maybe in the interest of time, we could very briefly introduce ourselves. Well, on the profile, you can actually, figure out each and every person's bio and background. But for the sake of beginning this session, maybe we could just very briefly introduce ourselves. So maybe why don't you go ahead first, Soner?
Sure, definitely. Hi, everyone, again. So I'm Soner from Beat, and the co-founder and the CEO in Beat Technologies. And we are based in New York, and we are focused on developing a technology that is based on understanding human behavior in commercial buildings, and then converting the building into an intelligent, adaptive operated building in order to optimize energy usage, but also optimize the whole operations in those small to medium-sized commercial buildings.
Sounds good. What about you, Luis?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Luis Marquez. I am the Energy Performance Director at HEN Europe, a Spanish consultancy focused on energy management and energy management systems and decarbonization processes. And I have been also collaborating with UNIDO during the last 7 years. And I'm especially focused on energy performance indicators, energy baselines, and advanced analytics in the context of energy management activities.
Sounds good. And you're based in which country or which city?
Well, I'm based in Valladolid. It's not. It's 200 kilometers from the capital, from Madrid. But well, we work in different countries in Europe. So well, we work from home. We are a 100% online company, but we are working in many countries. So that's one of the good things about digitalization and new technologies.
Sounds great. Katrina, maybe you could now introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Katarina Baronica. I'm a program manager in UNIDO's Energy Systems and Infrastructure division. My portfolio is covering mostly the industry interventions within urban context, in particular deployment of e-mobility, looking specifically in Asia and Pacific regions. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks a lot. I'm Ravi Gupta. I am the CEO and founder of Tambourine Innovation Ventures. We are an innovation advisory and venture acceleration firm based in Washington, D.C. area. And we work extensively with the World Bank and other major organizations on topics related to Industry 4.0, as well as innovation and technology commercialization more broadly. We've also worked extensively with UNIDO. So thank you, everybody, for making it to this particular session. And I guess we'll just wait for Enrico. If he joins, then maybe we can, at that point in time, we'll have him introduce himself. But in the interest of time, maybe we could just move ahead, and maybe we could move ahead in the same order, that is Soner, Luis, Katrina, and if Enrico joins us, then Enrico. So the first question that I have, really would be interested in knowing your thoughts on it. What are the key challenges that you see driving digitalization in the industry, and particularly in developing country contexts? And just to be sure that we are able to finish this breakout session on time, it will to limit your responses to no more than 4.5 minutes.
Sure. So I think I will start, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool. So, like in our case, as I have stated before, so we are heavily focused on commercial buildings, meaning that starting from office buildings into retails, into bank branches, and everything that is not residential. And as you know, especially construction and building technologies, they are really traditional technologies, and the adaptation cycle into digital technologies and digital world was really slow. before COVID, actually. So because, you know, we spent like 90% of our lives at the end of the day inside of those commercial buildings, and right now it is not that much, but it was like that. So, but what we have been seeing is especially the entry barrier in those in the construction and real estate industry was really high. So because, you know, they were like more heavily focused on human dependent operations, and at the end of the day, the biggest concern was, okay, like if we move to digital world and digital technologies, are we going to lose like the jobs, or is something going to happen with our existing situation as well? So that was the biggest fear, and I think that also caused a lot of entry barriers in new innovations and in new technologies. And but recently that is changing a lot. So maybe that's also because of COVID showed that we cannot depend or rely anymore on human inputs in those buildings, especially. So that meaning that those buildings should be converted into digital models, but also like creating those, converting those buildings into data sources. I mean, so that will also help, especially accelerate the process into moving into those concrete structures into digital assets. And but as I said, like these traditional facilities management, but also the investment side, that was, as I said, like really distance. Because of, I think that was also like because of this distrust in AI embedded systems as well, like whether it will really work or whether it will really make something different. But nowadays, I think especially people are looking for how we can like optimize the whole process in our buildings without having to invest a lot of money in additional technologies, but using the existing data sources and moving into digital models. So I think that is, especially in the real estate and especially in the commercial buildings estate, that is right now happening really fast than before.
Okay, sounds great. So over to you, Lewis.
Yeah, I think that from my collaboration with UNIDO, I have participated in projects in developing countries. My main expertise is in developed countries. So what the first important thing to address is that the first challenge is to understand the external context in each case, because it is very difficult to give a good solution if you don't understand all the context that is around a certain area, certain culture, certain country. I am not saying that all the countries are completely different, but obviously not all the countries are the same. So it is important to understand what is the state of the art in its place. In developed countries, for example, what I find is that the bigger barrier or the biggest challenge is about change management. So it is not about competencies, or it is not about technology. It is sometimes hard to say to someone that has been doing the same thing 20 years, say, okay, maybe there is a better way of doing this. And that is very difficult in developed countries. In developing countries, I find, and this is general, obviously I would need to go case by case, but in developing countries, what I feel is that in some cases they are more open to change, they are happy to change, happy to learn, but they have a lack of competencies. And it is not only a lack of competencies inside. I mean, when I mean lack of competencies, I mean lack of knowledge about new technologies. So that is a barrier inside, but also in the supplier side, because ideally, if you want this to be developed, you need local suppliers to be on board. But what we have found in several projects is that at the end, we needed to do the projects through international or European suppliers, because the local suppliers were not able to develop the project. So somehow we need to understand that we need also to be focused on helping them to have their own market somehow. And then another big challenge, just to finish, another big challenge that I see is the security issues and confidentiality issues about the data. I have seen this problem in many industries. in different sectors, and I need that we all need to understand that industries has some issues regarding sharing some data in the internet, but at the same time, I think that industries should understand that not all the data is so critical as they think, because sometimes I see like an excess of concern about these security and confidentiality issues. So probably finding the right red line to set what part of the data could be online or not, or things like that would be very recommendable. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds indeed very interesting. What about you, Katrina?
Thank you, Ravi. Well, let me try to answer this maybe with 5 challenges that come on top of my mind. Well, first one is addressing the rebound effect. So essentially, while digital technologies do lead us to sustainable production, at the same time, there is a rising demand for scarce resources, such as certain metals. But then we also have the increased consumption of energy. So for instance, using sensors and connected devices, this essentially leads to a higher energy demand. So this is one of the challenges. The second one that I would like to highlight is the difference in industrial sectors that are affected. So there is no one solution fits all. Different industrial sectors need different types of technologies. They need different type of data so they can actually use that to innovate. And therefore, they face different kind of challenges when they apply digital technologies. For instance, to address this challenge, Singapore has developed a Smart Industry Readiness Index, which essentially goes into the specific manufacturing industry and addresses their readiness. It looks like the index specifically goes along 3 pillars: automation, connectivity, and intelligence or data, and gives some result and inputs on how digital technology can be applied in that specific context. This brings me to the third challenge that already Luis has addressed, which is the industrial safety. So we are all talking about smart factories as intelligent kind of optimization of entire production systems, but that also brings us to some security issues where technologies, for instance, such as blockchain, have a potential to improve this security and manage the risk of the new technology. Fourth challenge that I would like to highlight is the widening technology gap. So the developing countries have, let's say, higher science, technology, and innovation capacity, so they can also absorb the new technologies quicker. And this also then potentially brings us to the even wider gap between developing and developed countries. So that's another concern or challenge that needs to be addressed. And then finally, I think Luis already talked about it and Adam talked about in his opening remarks, is the set of skills that is needed to address this change. So I can give you an example from one of our e-mobility projects, where suddenly mechanical engineers that were working on internal combustion engine vehicles now need to become electrical engineers working and specializing on e-mobility. So this is, I think, the final challenge that I would like to highlight here. Thank you.
That's extremely valuable. I know Enrique joined us, and I'll definitely have him introduce himself and respond to this particular question. But before that, Katrina, I had a question for you. So do you believe that some kind of technology extension programs in developing countries, which actually conduct ready assessments of the challenges and propose solutions would be valuable? Like the United States has something called industrial assessment centers, which have been very effective. Do you believe that is some kind of a response to to some of the challenges that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think also the Singapore Readiness Index, Smart Readiness Index that I mentioned, it goes in that direction. And I believe that this is essentially the baseline that we need when we start designing and proposing digital solutions for certain industries. So definitely that kind of assessment can give us a valuable insight and make sure that, of course, we design our interventions sustainable and smart as possible. But we also need to be open-minded and adjust our interventions when we see how this works in practice and how this needs to be modified based on the actual experience.
Yeah, that was indeed very, very valuable. So Enrique just joined us. Enrique, we had just concluded the first question and response set. So before we begin, maybe you could be so kind to introduce yourself to the panel. We obviously have your bio. The idea would be just to have a very quick introduction of your affiliation and what you do. And after that, maybe you could respond to the first question that we have in this particular breakout session. And that is, what are the key challenges to driving digitalization in industry, and specifically in developing country contexts? What do you, Enrico?
Thank you very much, Ravi, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me, and I'm really sorry because this should never happen. I came not late, but there were issues with the facilities today, and so sorry for this. But apart from this, I'm Enrico Biele. I'm coming here on behalf of the European Network of Energy Agencies, and I represent 19 national energy agencies in the field of energy efficiency and industry. What we do, we analyze these under the policy implementation point of view, barriers, challenges, and whatever concerns the improvement of policies in industry and SMEs. Coming to your question, I don't want to take more time for this, and I really want to say that digitalization is perceived to be a very strong opportunity from all of us, agencies, and a strong challenge as well, both for energy efficiency and just more an opportunity than a challenge for renewable energy sources. For both energy efficiency and renewable energy sources, it represents for us a relevant opportunity for both direct benefits and co-benefits. I'm talking about opportunities because then behind opportunities there are a lot of challenges, because these are potential opportunities to analyze benefits and co-benefits at present. For direct benefits, we see among them an increased knowledge of consumption, production, optimization of production loads, and product optimization. And among the co-benefits, which still represent in a way a very big challenge yet, we include the opportunity of relying on more accurate measurement and verification plans for an easier access to financial resources, because at the end, it's all about financial resources to then implement these very interesting digital opportunities. And just enlarging a little bit the perspective, not from a firm point of view, but from the policy analysis or policy making, so enlarging this boundary to the demand side, we see also the digitalization impact that appears to be much more complex to be evaluated. With digital devices potentially offer considerable improvements in energy efficiency for single sectors, such as industry or commerce or whatever, then the prevalence of more devices and equipment as servers could lead to relevant net increases in energy use, if not managed carefully. So this was just to highlight a little bit also the attention on what we see on the other side of the firm, and this should be probably a point to be addressed in the future and to include it in very wide policy level analysis.
Okay, that does sound very good. That does sound very good, and was wondering that in just perhaps if I were to take a quick snap poll, okay, what do you think related to this particular question itself? That what are the key challenges to driving digitalization in industry, particularly in developing country context? I was wondering if you could give very quick thoughts on what do you think would be in developing countries a key challenge. The value proposition itself is very less known, or do you think it's lack of financing, or is it just the lack of infrastructure? And it's a rapid fire round, so maybe not a very detailed response, but if you could give your quick reflections on these three possible, these three possible challenges that I see. And again, we'll go in the same order. I think we've lost our friend. He's again disconnected. Soner, are you there? Okay, that's fine. Maybe we could just move with Lewis, and maybe we could, just in the interest of maintaining the rhythm, we will continue to go in this order: Soner, Lewis, Katrina, and then Enrico. How about that? So over to you, Lewis.
Yeah. As you said, and the developing countries has a specific context, but I don't feel that. Well, one thing we need to take into account is that we heard a lot of times about Industry 4.0, and I have had a lot of times the same answer from companies. They said, I am in Industry 1.0. I need to work a lot to reach 4.0. So first of all, I need to reach 2.0, then 3.0. So that is important. I mean, I think there is a lot of things that can be already done in developing countries to be sure that they are closer to the ideal situation, to really implement very new technologies. And in that sense, I think that the capacity building programs are essential in that sense. So I feel that it is not possible to jump from 1.0 to 4.0 immediately, but you can set the basis to do a smooth transition. So in terms of, for example, in terms of capacities, I think that one of the big topics related to digitalization is about the use of advanced analytics and data analysis and statistical approaches and all that. This can be done also with very easy data, as monthly data, or data that this is already available in the industries and in every sector. So it is possible to start advancing not only in technologies but in techniques, which is also important. So in that way, I think that building that capacity will make or will soften the transition. And I think that developing countries has different ways of financing, and in some, at least from my experience, there are also big companies with sites in developing countries. So somehow there are ways of getting the money. The problem is that sometimes it is not easy to use it properly there. I have also seen that sometimes the finance is available, the finance side is available, but then we lose the objective. And maybe, for example, like 10 years ago, there was a boom with the energy meters, and then you can see industries with hundreds of meters, but when you look into details, then you see that maybe they know the energy consumption in the bathroom in the floor 3, but they don't know the energy consumption in the chillers, which are the main users. So it is not about doing things very fast. It's about thinking properly about the best way of spending the money you have, independently of the money you get. If you spend it efficiently, you can do it right, and you can be closer to the digital, or you can start the digitalization process.
What about you, Enrico? Oh, sorry, it was Katrina. I apologize.
That's okay. So let's continue with the flow. Well, I think from the 3 challenges that you have mentioned, specific to developing countries, I would have to say that reliable energy infrastructure would be the main challenge. And I think I would even say it's a key prerequisite for digitalization, since no digital system can work without energy source. But that also then leads to, it's internet coverage, which is also dependent on availability of electricity. So I think energy infrastructure is a key challenge that needs to be addressed if we want to talk about then digital technologies and how to introduce them within manufacturing plants or within the energy systems.
Sounds good. What about you, Enrico?
Thank you, Ravi. Yes, I strongly agree with both Katerina and Luis, and I start from the infrastructure and the energy supply. That's essential to do to improve, or let's say to implement any digitalization process. And on the other side, I would like also to maybe mention the difficulties of accessing the finance resources, because sometimes it's not that there is no finance support from the World Bank or whatever else, but sometimes it's difficult to make this step and to access these resources, even if they're somehow or somewhere on some websites. But not all firms, and specifically family managing the family business, little family business have all resources necessary to access these finances. And also, yes, sometimes the steps from something which is 1 or 2.0 to 4 or 5.0 is a very, very large step to be made, compatibility with the times that is given to the enterprises, or I would say also family businesses.
Okay, that sounds really great. So maybe we'll move on to the next question, and that is, where are the what are the high impact intervention points to enable progress in innovation and digitalization for sustainable energy industry integration? So we'll try to move in the same order again. And Soner first, Luis second, Katerina third, and Enrico, and then Enrico. But I don't think we have Mr. Soner, so let's move ahead with you, Luis.
As I said before, and maybe because it is my area of expertise, but I feel that the use of advanced analytics and advanced indicators in order to optimize processes is one of the main intervention points. The reason why I say this is because independently on the level of technology that you have in your installation, you can really start doing much more with the data that you have available than what you are doing at the moment. So just with this process of using the available data, but with an advanced technique based on a statistical approach, you will be able to create energy performance indicators that are precise, that are much better than the ones that are widely used at the moment, and that, for example, at the moment, almost every sector in the world, almost every site is using energy or kilowatt hours per unit of production or specific energy consumption ratios, and these ratios are not good enough. In fact, sometimes they give you the wrong result. So jumping to a new indicators, more advanced energy performance indicators will help you to optimize the systems. You could develop different indicators for different processes, for different sites. You could check if you are performing as expected or not in a very easy way. Obviously, the more technology that you implement in that area, the more automation, the better, but you can start from scratch, from what you have at the moment. So that's why that intervention point, I think, is very cost effective, because you don't really need a big investment. You just need to work with the same data you have, but with another approach, and start monitoring processes in a continuous way. So it is not so much about new technologies or about investment. It's about starting improving operational control in your processes. And from my experience, the potential of saving potential is huge. We're talking about 25, 30, 40% of energy consumption reduction just through improving operational control. So this is applicable to every country, to every sector, independently on the level of technology available at the moment. So as I said, it is not only about technology, it is also about advanced techniques.
Okay, that's indeed very interesting. And then Over to you. Who's the next person?
I think that should be me.
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you, Ravi. Well, let me also try to address your question, highlighting 5 points, well, 5 technologies and how they relate to different intervention points when it comes to sustainable energy and industry integration. So maybe the first technology that I would mention here is artificial intelligence, which essentially the way it plays the role is in the supply-demand management in the grid, for instance. So what that means is essentially optimization of energy production and use according to the weather patterns, for instance, and consumption patterns. And I can give you a concrete example there. We are currently implementing a smart grid project in Malacca in Malaysia, where we are essentially applying smart metering to allow for integration of smaller energy producers through renewable energy sources and allowing them to act as prosumers within that context. So that's the first technology that I would mention. Second technology group that I would mention here is drones. So for instance, we can apply them in the context of logistics and delivery systems within urban areas. Or we can apply them in the context of power grid management. So for inspection of power lines. Or for instance, in mapping of industries within urban context, which then can be related to urban planning and looking at the number of jobs within the, let's say, 2-kilometer radius, which is an ideal context for urban planners. The third technology that I want to highlight, and I think Luis already talked about it a bit, is utilization of big data. So for instance, Luis already addressed it, how it can be relevant when it comes to energy efficiency in industry, essentially using the energy consumption data analysis to optimize the energy use. Then when it comes to mobility patterns, we can use big data to optimize the real-time optimization of transport. And when it comes to, for instance, application of agro-industries, the Internet of Things-based applications can help us improve irrigation systems, for instance. The fourth category of technology that I want to mention here is 3D printing. For instance, the way it is applied in aviation industry. So with production of certain plane parts using 3D printers, we are actually able to have lighter parts, which leads to the decreasing fuel use. And then, of course, to the mitigation of climate change down the line. And the final technology group that I would mention here is blockchain. The way we would use that is, for instance, in energy trading to facilitate the uptake of distributed renewables. So I think we all have heard about the example of, for instance, Brooklyn, where they have started this kind of trading scheme between households utilizing blockchain technology. So I think I will close my intervention with this. Thank you.
Okay. What about you, Enrico?
Thank you, Ravi. Yes, I'll try to take a different perspective also on this point from the side of who is trying to implement policies or develop policies addressed also to digitalization. And I would say that first, it's very good but big question, because to answer this question, we need to analyze this at least 4 levels. We're not doing it now, of course, but at least this depends from the geographical level, the level of development of each country, the firm dimension as well, because a large enterprise cannot be treated in terms of policies as the same level of a very small family business. And the other point that we need to take probably into account is to check how the business is run. Who is the final decision maker, if it's the CEO or if it's just the debt of the family or whatever else. So if it is an external CEO, maybe not coming from the family with a more independent point of view. Why I'm saying this? Because we really need to understand new proper business models to implement also in policies. Otherwise, this is not going to probably be effective. But anyway, just to maybe condense an answer to your question, I would say that probably culture and knowledge are a very important intervention points to enable progress in innovation. These, of course, provided that we have a reliable facility in terms of energy supply and internet supply. Of course, this is always the minimum basis. Then the introduction of these digital technologies in organizations is, as we all know, a very complex process associated with a different level of challenges. And most of technologies related to the concept of digitalization are or may be complex and still relatively expensive. And not all of the companies, especially the small ones, can afford their wide or large use. Then, moreover, other points could be added to this, like digital technologies means a lot, and to have very good cost-benefit evaluation on the short, but particularly on the long run, may be something quite difficult. And some possible solutions, creating centralized solutions, e-services or institutional platforms, which could address these points, but these again must be something very customized on the local level. I refer particularly to the small businesses, because small businesses are, at least in Europe, more than 99% of the companies. But in the world, this definition, depending from the definition of small businesses, this percentage is not so different. So we are also at the general point, I say, for Europe and neighbors, but I've heard also besides Europe, where small and medium enterprises are now in a phase where there is quite a lot of interest on them for several reasons. One, unfortunately, is that the COVID is impacting very much small businesses, probably much more than large ones. And now it's probably a good moment also to talk a little bit more of small or medium-sized enterprises, also to help them in achieving transition through digitalization process, which could not lead probably to a industry 5.0 somehow, but at least we can start to do something more. I think it's okay for me. I took some minutes. Thank you for your question.
Hey, no, that's indeed very interesting. I do not know if we have Sonair back, so I guess we'll just have to proceed with the last question because we have only 15 minutes left. So over to you, starting again the same order, Luis, Katrina, and then Nico. The last question that we have, and that is, what is the one thing that you would recommend to drive digitalization in the industry?
Yeah, well, when we talk about decarbonization, I always say that there are many ways of decarbonizing. One is energy efficiency, electrification, renewables, all of them. But the only one that you can really start now is system optimization. The rest of the things you can work in parallel, but in order to get the money to develop the project, etc., you will need time. Maybe you will need half a year for some of them, or 1 year or 2 years to get money. I don't know. The only thing that you can really do now is to start optimizing what we have at the moment. That is part of also of the process. If we talk about digitalization in the same way, as I said, you can start working on mid-term projects and long-term projects, but you should start as soon as possible changing what you can really change, which is your way of working in the day-to-day operations. So, as I said before, trying to increase competencies in new technologies, try to get competencies in data analysis, as Katarina said, in big data analysis and all these activities that are related to managing a huge amount of data will help from the very beginning. Even if you don't have a big amount of data, just applying the same kind of techniques will help you to detect savings. So while all the other projects that are more complex require time to be planned, require money to be implemented, try to be focused on techniques, on advanced techniques based on digitalization world that will help from the very beginning to save energy from today. So we are in an emergency and we need to start saving from today. We cannot wait 6, 12 months or 2 years to get projects done.
Okay, that sounds great. What about you, Katerina?
Yeah, I would say in the context of developing countries, really look into energy infrastructure. I think we highlighted that also as one of the biggest challenges, but I think that's a key requirement if we want to talk about digitalization. But then additionally, what I would say is the business model. I think we all need to figure out what is the return on the investment for implementation of certain digital technology within, for instance, manufacturing plant. I think we need to have numbers to back up whatever we are suggesting. So, of course, we need to think about the environmental impact, the climate change, whether we can help towards mitigation or adaptation to climate change, but also this needs to be backed up by business model. I think industry speaks numbers. We need to have figures on return of investments for implementing digital technologies. Thank you.
Okay. That is indeed very interesting. And what about you, Enrico?
Yes, I think that I will split this question in the long run and probably the short run. On the long run, we see probably that the digitalization needs to be included in a more global perspective, meaning that digitalization is already part of some country or continent strategies in terms of policies. For example, in Europe, it's part of the smart sector integration, or in other continents or countries or federations of states as well. But probably we need to also add some other points to these strategies, like the climate point of view, for example, to come at a certain point to have, comprehensive policies where the digitalization is included, but also digitalization can give a strong support to all these aspects. For example, in energy audit analysis or policies, we sometimes observe that we're still at a point where meters need to be implemented. And sometimes meters are implemented, but there is not probably proper expertise to read those meters. And I'm not speaking of very advanced technologies. Once we come at a time that we have meters, we have culture, and these meters can also track not only energy, but also some other benchmarking like climate aspects or something else. And what to do, why to do this? Probably to ask for incentives, to connect this with sustainability reports, to achieve, of course, more money savings, because that's the ultimate goal of the firm. We will be at a very high point. This on one side. On the other side, the digitalization needs to be included in the comprehensive policies, but it is a very strong and hard topic to be faced, because it means very, very much. And also analyzing the word digitalization would take a lot of efforts. Why I'm saying this? Because also in policy implementing and making, we struggle. We seek reliable and updated and relevant pieces of information about digitalization to help improving policies. But this is a very fast horse. It's very hard to go behind the new technologies, and everything is digitalization. So as soon as we get, as policymakers or policy implementers, very reliable sources of information in terms of publications, but much more in terms of working groups or interactions, we are very, very happy, because so we can maybe take more time to address our efforts, also to improve policies or to try to stop who wants to take advantage of policies, to leave more money for who really needs. This is on the long run. A couple of examples. We are working in ENR, specifically my colleagues from the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, with the whole network on the smart sector integration. And in a few days, a big report will be published on the website. This is something which is a collection of a lot of needs coming from the private sector and the public sector. And I think this is the key, to match the needs of public needs with the private sector needs. Another initiative in this sense is managed by the UNIDO. It's the UNIDO Industry Working Group. We find it very useful. Hannes and Marco are doing an excellent job in this time of COVID, taking at the same table a lot of relevant people from the private sectors, and we also from the public sector. It's a very interesting way of learning by listening. And it is also, of course, backed up by an international organization, and we feel very much safe from the outcomes of this work. Just to conclude, at the firm level, I mean, in the short run, probably there is not much more to do than take the advantages of the recovery fund opportunities in this COVID period, because everything we say in this period may be something ideal, realistic probably. We need just to help the firms, from our point of view, taking advantage of these recovery fund opportunities. That's probably not so much to do now. In a few months, I hope we can speak again and talk again about the future of improving policies or the situation of the firms.
Yeah, and I hope we can actually physically meet in Vienna. That would be ideal.
Sure, I hope so. And as you can see, I talk about digitalization of other countries or developing countries, but as you can see, I'm a living proof that in Italy we still have problems with digitalization. I cannot turn on a video. There is no way today of doing it. Sorry about
that. No problems, no problems. So we have about 5 or 6 minutes left before we need to revert back to the main hall. So I've been, of course, taking notes, and thank you, everybody. I mean, very rich set of thoughts, and kind of it's very, to summarize everything that you said would be like attempting to convert a bull into a bullion. And I don't think I'm particularly good at it, but nonetheless, I took a lot of notes, and I'll try to distill those. And I would really appreciate if you could, be so kind to just very briefly comment on it. Okay. So in my opinion, it's just the fact that there is very poor, reliable energy infrastructure, and lack of, and I'm speaking obviously from a developing country perspective, because that's what UNIDO's main goal is. And that is lack of financing, lack of reliable energy infrastructure, poor business models are perhaps the key bottlenecks, and perhaps the greatest opportunity for organizations such as UNIDO to intervene. And also the fact that digitalization is occurring very rapidly. It further exacerbates the divide between the more developed countries and the developing countries. So some level of technology transfer and accelerating the pace of industrialization, digital infrastructure, as well as energy infrastructure in developing countries, and creating better business models for those might be useful. So how would you think that encapsulates all the thinking, or something more to be added? Because I'll have only 3 to 4 minutes in front of the chairperson in the main hall, so I just need to synthesize everything. And I think I'll add one more thing, that is some kind of frameworks like the Smart Manufacturing Readiness Index of Singapore are perhaps extremely valuable in in prioritizing interventions. So if I were to summarize all the thoughts, unfortunately Soner is not there, so he cannot correct me if I have misquoted him. But I just want to be sure that I don't misquote any one of you, and I'm able to effectively capture all the rich thinking that you presented. So, maybe we could go in the same order again. Luis, what do you have to comment on what I just said?
Yeah, I think it is right. I don't have any special comments. I feel comfortable with the conclusions. So, Katarina, if you want to add something.
Yeah, maybe one or 2 points that I would suggest for your consideration, and I think we discussed them. The first one is to also account for differences on how different industrial sectors are affected by digital technologies. So that essentially relates to the Singapore Smart Industry Readiness Index. So really thinking about that there is no one solution for all, but looking into the industry readiness to actually apply certain digital solutions. And then I would also maybe further highlight on the skills that are required for implementing digital technologies. I think I shared initially example on e-mobility, so how we are facing now. Mechanical engineers are starting to be electrical engineers, and I think Luis and Enrico also talked about capacity building that is required and the skill set that is required to follow implementation of digital technologies.
Right. So interdisciplinary knowledge and developing human skills. That's very important. What about you, Enrico?
No, I basically agree with what you said, and what also Katerina added now. For me, you already said that there is a strong need to make differentiations and analyze different industry sectors, but also geographical level and firm dimension parameters is already something that should be needed. Where in policy analysis, policy making, and also in implementation programs, because there is no one single solution in terms of digitalization for each enterprise.
Okay, that sounds great. Sorry.
No, just thank you.
Okay, that sounds great. So I guess we can disband. We see each other in the main room then. Okay.
Let's take a look at the results from our poll. First of all, thank you so much to everybody who sent in a response. These were the results. So data collection and energy monitoring seem to be the most popular one, followed by automated demand side management, and last but not least, automation processes. And I think that these resonate quite well with the different discussions that we heard from in the breakout rooms. So on this note, I will invite our moderators to share their findings. Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, welcome back. So, Vita, why don't I give you the floor and to let us know what happened in your group.
Thank you so much, Petra. Well, we had an absolutely excellent and very enthusiastic discussion in our group. So we're looking at what are the applications and opportunities that digitalization can unlock. And of course, having the data that digitalization can provide, the data, the enhanced controls, opens up practically endless opportunities to optimize both within the company, but also along the whole value chain, and opportunities to create value for the company through better manufacturing, more resource efficiency, but also linking that to decarbonization and environmental goals in a way that delivers positive outcomes for the company. We moved on to looking at how digitalization can change energy and investment decisions. And again, having data and understanding how energy is used across the company, having an understanding of what are the factors that influence energy use, fundamentally transform the decision-making basis for investments, and provide opportunities to really make strategic investments that are of benefit for the company, but then also have environmental benefits. Another aspect that we touched upon is how the multiple benefits of energy efficiency or resource efficiency is something that we frequently talk about, but digitalization actually helps quantify and monetize these so that these can be incorporated into investment decisions so that you can really get good outcomes. A key aspect that was also touched upon is the need to understand what are the outcomes that you want. It's that's the first question to ask, and of course designing your investment projects in a way to deliver that is absolutely fundamental. And then moving on to the policy space, we had a great discussion around the yet unexploited potential of ISO 5001 and steps needed to make it not a good thing to have, but an absolute must to have, and creating that momentum in a situation where companies look at each other, they look at their competitors and they say they have it, we absolutely need to have it, and we need to have it soon. Because this systematic view on energy and linking that with digitalization opportunities enables of continuous progress, enables identifying the opportunities to invest, to create even greater energy savings and decarbonizations. Another aspect that we were discussing was, which is I think quite interesting for UNIDO and taking into consideration the excellent projects that you're implementing, is technical assistance, and that there's a great opportunity to include digital tools and capacity building within these projects, and as well as a very important point, to provide opportunities for ongoing support and advice, because that's absolutely fundamental in terms of enabling companies that perhaps lack the skill sets or lack the capacity to work effectively with digitalization to provide this continuous hand-holding. And the issue of capacity building was also reflected in our discussions around experiences from working in different countries, that there are still significant skills gaps and significant opportunities to create a cadre of professionals that have digitalization skills, decarbonization skills, and business and manufacturing skills. So I think that's probably the best summary that I can manage of our discussions. And as a final point, one issue that we did discuss was the value of digitalization to decarbonize across value chains. And of course, ISO 5001 provides an opportunity, digitalization provides an opportunity, and reinforcement through policy, through requiring greater visibility or providing other types of incentives could be helpful further even more. So with that, thank you very much, Petra.
Thank you very much for this precise feedback. I really think you had a great discussion. So many wonderful outputs. Wonderful. Thank you so much. May I pass on now to Ali to give us feedback on what countries are saying?
Sure. Thank you, Petra. I think Vida touched upon many items that we also discussed in our session. So our session was country voices. So let's go by country. We heard from folks from UK that harnessing the big data and doing the analysis gave them, their customers, opportunity to kind of detect problems early on. And that was a very good example that we heard from countries. Also, very importantly, this big data and analysis kind of help with the demand response potential and kind of having the planning in advance and taking into account the fluctuation both on the production side and also supply side of electricity. And also we heard from our expert from Austria, same thing. Austria has this large industrial efficiency program that they're using digitalization for integration of this cutting edge new technology into industry sector, and this digitalization is kind of one of the technology set that helps that integration. Also, the integration of renewable energy. Again, we came to the issue of having big data analysis and all those tools from Industry 4.0 in order to address the issue with intermittency and fluctuations on renewable energy generation and those things if you want to integrate into our industry. Very interesting insight from our expert from the steel industry in Russia. They have done a lot of work on Industry 4.0 and a lot of measures they have taken. Digitalization, they have installed like thousands of like small sensors and collecting these data, analyzing. And I was curious how that happened. What was the driver that they are so proactive? And he was saying, they implemented some measures early on and like no cost kind of improvement, and they got millions of dollars of savings. So management loved it and gave them a little money to do more. So maybe that could be one lesson learned for other folks. So it was very interesting. Our colleague from UAE emphasized on the issue of visualization of data, and then analyzing those data in order to get, justify investment. When you collect the data, analyze, it can give you really good kind of reasoning tool to go and try to justify your investment with the top management. On the policy front, some of the policy items that was discussed was long-term policy, supportive policy, so industry can make decisions, accordingly. Training of personnel, because these are cutting-edge technologies we are talking about, so training and capacity building important. Financing for implementation of R&D important, although again, our colleague from a steel company, which is a very big company with resources, he said financing is not much of an issue for them, so perhaps financing is more of an issue for SME. So that's an interesting kind of lesson we learned there. Also, cybersecurity laws and also standards harmonization is an important aspect when it comes to digitalization. So that's very brief on some of the topics we discussed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, lots of inputs for different parts of the world, lots of different points of view. So thank you so much for this, Ali. Ravi, may I give you the floor to hear us back from industry? What for enablers?
Our session was enablers for progress, and the discussion was extremely rich. And as it's essentially trying to convert a bull into a bullion because there was so much information packed, but I'll do my best. Okay, so the key insights are that is first of all, because of digitalization, the gap between the more developed countries and the developing countries is going to exacerbate because the developed countries do have the infrastructure for digitalization as well as the energy infrastructure, and the two are related. In developing countries, they don't have reliable energy infrastructure, which then means they also don't have reliable data infrastructure. So unless strong measures are taken to have these developing countries catch up, the digital divide is only going to grow. And secondly, because of this merger between digitalization and energy, it's important to address both the infrastructure challenges, that is reliable energy infrastructure challenges, as well as the digital infrastructure challenges in developing countries, which necessarily means that skills are going to be more interdisciplinary, and we need to have a cadre of professionals who understand the energy world as well as the digital world. And so there's going to be huge emphasis, there should be a huge emphasis on skills development. The second point that emerged was that because not all all industrial sectors are the same, it would be imprudent to kind of have a one-size-fits-all kind of an approach, because different industrial sectors have different needs and different responses to digitalization. And one of the toolkits that, or rather one of the frameworks that could be utilized is the Smart Industrial Readiness Index of Singapore. Good starting point to assess the various industries as to where they stand as regards digitalization, what is their readiness level, and what are the interventions then that can be proposed. The other issue that emerged was that the financing of such interventions can sometimes be a challenge, especially because the costs are front-loaded and the benefits are down the line. So good financing models, which means good business models, is something that needs to be created and articulated very well. Because in developing countries, they may not, sometimes there might be difficulty in understanding what are the long-term economic or financial gains that the business can accrue as a result of such intervention. So explaining to them the value proposition, creating a good business model, as well as a good financing model so that some of the short-term financing needs can be met. And more important, and of course, the most basic thing is that organizations such as UNIDO would have to perhaps focus a lot more on energy infrastructure to create the basis, because many of these countries are just in the first industrial revolution, so it's a bit premature to talk about the fourth industrial revolution. So those were, the key highlights of our discussion.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Ravi, do you hear me now?
Miss Petra, Miss Vida, can you hear us? Maybe you could just call me on my phone.
Ravi, we hear you. So I guess I don't know why you cannot hear them, but you hear me, right, Ravi?
Yes, I can hear you. That's Ali. But Ali, can you also hear Petra and Vida, or is it just me?
Yeah, I hear everyone. So I think it's just you cannot hear them, but that's fine. We heard everything you said, so it's back to Petra.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ali, and thank you, Ravi. Maybe then in the video you can also hear us. Thanks for. I took note, and I'm trying to reflect all the important and really valuable thoughts that were provided.
I do know that Petra. Sorry.
Yes. Ravi.
Ravi, Petra is talking, so perhaps I think she's wrapping up the session. Thank you. Go ahead, Petra.
Thank you. A little hiccups when we're talking about digitalization, no? So what I learned is that data really is important and drives a decision-based investments. I liked also the word of visualizes what investments are needed. I think it was from you, Ali. It clearly helps companies to enhance efficiency in this. Also, as Vita mentioned, inspire a greater uptake of ISO 50001. There is a recommendation to UNIDO to look very much into capacity building, also reflecting what Ravi has said, that there is a huge gap and might even grow more between the developed and the developing world. We need new skills. I think this mentioning of interdisciplinary skills, combining both aspects. And there was also a mentioning about a few toolkits, and that we need new and creative and smart business models that can really help to create and to visualize the value proposition of this. So I think then there was also, sorry for that, do not want to forget about policies. We need long-term policies that also enable, that was come from you, Ali, and from your group, to facilitate training and capacity building, as well as standards would be highly welcome to accompany this global undertaking. I hope that I was able to wrap up everything. Thank you all for your inputs and reflections, and back to you, Anna.
Thank you, Petra. Thank you, everybody. We enjoyed a lot having you over, so thank you so much for that. To all of our participants, please don't forget that we have the networking station working until 3:45, so you have 10 minutes to connect with other participants, and we will see you next week for our product session. So thank you for joining, and see you next week.